Good evening, everyone. Today is February 17th, and this is the Subcommittee of Economic Development meeting at Worcester City Hall. The time is approximately 5:30. Joining me are my subcommittee members, Dr. Satya Mitra, at-large city councilor, and the second member for a three-member panel is Kate Toomey, also at-large city council. Do we have a roll call that we can take?
Through the chair, do you mind just announcing yourself and the members one more time? I think we were just struggling with volume in the chamber.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today is February 17th. This is the Subcommittee of Economic Development for the City Council of the City of Worcester. This is a three-member subcommittee. I am the chairperson, City Councilor Morris Bergman, City Councilor at large. Joining me are two City Councilor at large members. One is Dr. Satya Mitra, and the other is Councilor Kate Toomey. And I'm asking the clerk. I'm clerking today is Deputy Clerk Clear.
Through the chair, I'll take a roll call at this time. Chairperson Councilor Bergman.
Here.
Councilor Toomey.
Here.
And Councilor Mitra.
Here.
My volume may have gone out. Deputy Clerk Claire Robbins is clerking with us today. Would you, Deputy Clerk Robbins, read the virtual attendance policy on our agenda for us?
Through the chair, certainly. Item 1A is the virtual attendee call-in information. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and in order to ensure active public engagement, the City of Worcester currently allows for both in-person and remote participation at all City Council and Standing Committee meetings. To partake in the meeting, you may attend the meeting in person here in the Esther Howland Chamber at City Hall, or follow the link on the city's website to join via Zoom, or dial the direct line. If you join a Zoom meeting by dialing in with a phone number, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. The Economic Development Committee Zoom phone number is 1-646-828-7666, and the access code is 160-382-3487.
Thank you. I don't have the advantage of being there personally, and I apologize for that. So, Ms. Robbins, could you verify for me who the deputy or the vice chair of this committee is at our first meeting?
Through the chair, to be clear, you were looking for the vice chair of the Economic Development Committee?
Yeah.
That would be Councilor Toomey.
So, Councilor Toomey, if you don't object, would you introduce, because I don't have eyes on the floor, I'm doing this virtually without video. Would you introduce the members of the Economic Development team that have been invited here this evening, if you know who they are, and otherwise ask them to introduce themselves?
Certainly. Well, I first would recognize Peter Dunn, who would also include his staff. So, Peter.
Sure. Through the chair, Peter Dunn, Chief Development Officer, and with me is Michelle Smith, our Assistant Chief Development Officer for Planning and Regulatory Services.
Is that it?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Claire, could you read us the first agenda item? Actually, before we get to that, do we have people in the audience and on Zoom that want to participate in public participation?
Through the chair, there are several members of the public on both Zoom and public participation. If you'd like to begin in the chamber, or would you like to begin online?
Yeah. No, I'm going to do it in the chamber because I think all other things being equal, I know that sometimes reasons that people can't physically be there, but I do think if you make the effort to physically be there, we'll take you first. But my question is that between the in-person and online, do you have a sense of how many people there are?
Through the chair, there are approximately 8 people online at this time. Before we continue, I'm just going to ask if maybe cable services, if there's anything we can do to increase the volume? No? Okay. So Counselor, I'm just going
Okay.
to ask if you can make sure that you're speaking loudly. I can hear you, but I know some members of the public might not be able to, so if we could just make sure that you're speaking.
I will certainly try to do better. So what I would like to do is, before we start the public participation, I would like to limit public participation to 30 minutes, which we do at council, with the understanding that if there's a need to consider extending it, we will certainly consider extending it. But 30 minutes, I think, is sufficient for the number of people I'm being told want to participate. So we can get started with people in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, if members of the audience would like to speak, we ask that they state their name and city of residence.
That's correct.
Hello. Hi,
Yep. Could you give us your name and city of residence?
I am Abby Mortellero. Here I am a Worcester resident, and I am here to speak against big businesses getting tax breaks. You know, we give too much to the wealthy, too many tax breaks, too many tips, and the rich just keep wanting more. Well, it's time to stop giving them more and more.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Gary Hunter. I'm in District 5, and I'm here to oppose number 4A. As quoting the union carpenters, which I believe, we oppose developers that don't take responsibility development seriously. They paint a rosy picture while not supporting community priorities. In this specific case, we cannot support a developer that continues to be dismissive of illegal activities that have been investigated by the Attorney General's office, and of which the subcontractor, Barber Drywall, was issued citations in 2024 and again in 2025. If we're going to use our tax money, we have to use it to help all the people in the city. We need to do more for, for lower rental costs. There is a shortage of rental property in Worcester, and you're probably saying this guy's crazy because he's gotten up there and saying we need more housing. Well, we do need more housing, but we need more affordable housing, not these expensive apartments, and only 10% of the projects for low-income people. So I oppose that, and I hope you'll consider doing that also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Luis Reyes, and I am opposed to the zoning of 42 Herman Street. I do believe that we have two common streets there that they got closed off for one-ways, and there were two-ways. When new development was done on Chandler, which is in process right now, Beacon and Chandler, and the other street that happened to be closed as a two-way for one-way is the one that it meets down by Lorraine Street. The next question I have is where we are grandfather in the 42 Herman Street, and this street here gets very busy, and I have pictures to present. Also, the fire department there has problem coming up that street, which will be Herman Street, in case of an emergency and fire. They want a zone because they need development. I think I oppose to it. I live at 42 Herman Street, and I feel that we are not for it.
Mr.
Thank you.
Reyes, correct?
Yes.
So hang on one second, because I don't want you there all night if what I think I'm about to say is correct. Claire, is that the item involving Los Centros?
Through the chair, that would be item 3A, the petition of Jonathan Finkelstein on behalf of Centro Los Americos.
Is that what Mr. Reyes is referring to?
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So there's been a request for that item to be held due to a medical issue regarding the attorney. So the option we have is to wait for that item to be called, or I have no issue in taking it up right now. And if the item is held, you can go home and we'll deal with it at a different time. So, Mr. Reyes, you tell me if you want to hang around and watch.
I will definitely will hang.
Magnificent.
We could do it now. I think go forward with it now. I have exhibits, and this is on a good day.
No, we're not going to have a hearing now because they're not going to present now. Their
Okay.
attorney is ill.
Okay.
So the issue is going to be either we're going to have a discussion about continuing it, and under the circumstances, I'd be surprised if we didn't, and that conversation could take place this moment, and then you could go home if it's continued, or we could wait till it comes up in the order of the agenda, which could be an hour from now, and then you could go home then if it's continued. And I'm trying to save you and whomever else you brought with you the time of waiting around if it's just going to get continued anyways. But if you don't mind waiting around and enjoy watching the seamless work of city government, we can keep you there for an hour, but that's up to you.
No, it's going to be continued either way.
Is it going to be continued either way?
No, he's ill.
Through the
He's
chair,
sick.
if I
He's
could
not
clarify, so just to be clear, through the chair, you're stating that this item will be held and will be discussed at a later date. Is that correct?
Exactly. The attorney representing La Centra is unavailable due to an illness.
So will it be on the record that we were here today?
Through the chair, correct. It will be stated that you were here in opposition of item 3A, but unfortunately, the action that will be taken tonight is that the item will be held.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do you want to put your name in there too?
Don't go anywhere until we take a vote to hold it, okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, so to my colleagues, you've heard what I've been told, and the motion I'd like to make, just to kind of move people along so they don't have to wait around for nothing, is to hold that item for a future date. Hopefully, the attorney will be well sooner than later, and we can take the item up as soon as possible, but we just cannot do it tonight. So my motion would be to hold the item. So Claire, could you take a roll call, please?
Through the chair, the motion is
Go
to
ahead.
is to hold item 3A?
Yes. I think the audience participation member had a question.
Yes, through the chair, if the member of the public, if you had a, no, you're all set? Okay. Then I will take the roll call
Okay.
for item 3A. Chairperson, Counselor Bergman,
Yes.
Counselor Toomey,
Yes.
and Counselor Mitra.
Yes.
Great, so item 3A is held.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for cooperating. We'll be in touch in the future. Yeah? So the next person from the public who would like to address the subcommittee, please come forward.
Francesco Bavona, District 5, Worcester, Mass. I'm here today to speak in favor of the 401 to 409 main development and associated funding. Housing, in the middle of the housing crisis that we're in, I find every development to be of critical importance, including this one. I understand that union voices are important, and there are a lot of people who have been brought in as allies to the unions for tonight that are people I tend to agree with. However, I would like to remind all that there is with the shortage of housing, I would like to see the people that I approve of in government enabling more housing than they are putting obstacles in front of, and it's been disheartening to see that it's been not the case this year. So I don't know. I would like this development to happen along with most other big developments, including the one in my own neighborhood. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person that wants to address the council subcommittee?
Dan Donahue, Malmo Street in Worcester, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm staying here to speak in support of, I think it's agenda item 3B, which is a petition filed by former Councilor Russell and myself in concern to the Esco Road property. I think you'll hear from some neighbors tonight about the property, but just want to give some context to where this comes from. About over a year ago, the neighborhood was alerted to the idea of a CarMax facility being developed in that area. When the came to light, there was some miscommunication and some lack of direction from the city and from the developer. And with the property having 159 abutters, I believe it is, it obviously has a major impact on the quality of life for the neighbors that surround that area. I want to thank the neighbors that worked together to have petitions signed that got neighborhood meetings together and kind of raised their issues and their worries about what the effect of this facility could have on, and really worked hard to glean information that they could on what exactly was an auction house going to be and what was going to happen. But looking towards the future, I think we ran into some frustration with the process of how this development was proceeding forward. And there was many zoning board of appeals meetings that were advertised, and many people would come down. I was one of them, would come on a weeknight and sacrifice their time only to see an item held. And the frustration and the lack of communication, I think, really wore many thin. And this petition was brought forward by Councilor Russell at the time as a way to kind of elevate the conversation around this property about exactly what, as the city looks to develop beyond downtown, back into our neighborhoods, and it's going to run into these issues of how are we going to affect the quality of life of the neighbors around us, the people that are paying the property taxes, that have invested in the neighborhood. How do we ensure that their quality of life is protected and that we're making sure that we're making investments that are smart and also in part of the strategic vision of the city as we invest in infrastructure and we try to capitalize on these properties. I know this part of the city has been called by the city managers before as a last frontier for development, and how do we kind of think holistically about that? So I'd like to have that conversation and look forward to you guys having that conversation. Anything I can do, please help. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next person that wants to address the subcommittee, please step forward.
Yes, my name is John Malvaros. I live on Bayless Ave in Worcester. We are direct abutters of the property at 34 Escott Road. And so we are in support of the rezoning to RL7 for this property for several reasons. One was the amount of work that went into having CarMax essentially walk away from this proposal based off of, as Representative Donahue stated, their tactics of not going, hoping we wouldn't show up, trying to set different parameters around how it was supposed to be developed, only to pull the application under the guise of how they stated was to, based off of the neighborhood's objections and input, they wanted to redo it so it would be more friendly for their organization, for our neighborhood. When that was allowed to be pulled, it was done without prejudice. So we know that from that time that they could come back and they could do it again. So that was the second time that an industrial type of organization tried to come into that area. And it was the second time it was denied based off the fact that we abut a very sizable conservation area. There's lots of runoff. A lot of this work has been done over the course of 9 months in several different meetings, be it either at the zoning meetings, submitting paperwork, submitting statements, signatures, and having to redo that again for another industry type to go into this area that is totally surrounded by residential areas. It seems to be a waste of time. I feel that by rezoning it to RL7 actually makes it fit within that part of the city. The location next to Route 20 where all of the upgrades went to the sewage and to the electric a few years ago, I feel falls right within that. I know there's a lot of people here tonight talking about it, and I hear it every week at the city council meetings about housing. Why not build housing there? Why not make that somewhere that it could actually be used in a more friendly way, go through the permitting so it's not so bad from a runoff perspective, from hazardous materials, things that they've always run into, and make it to where they can actually utilize it not only on the tax rolls, because I know that's always important as well, but it is prime location for having additional residential locations within the city. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. All right, next.
Yes, hi, my name is Carrie. I am a homeowner and a butter on Bayless Ave. I was affected by the entire CarMax issue, which I think the only thing I would add to what Dan and my husband said is that it wasn't a CarMax dealership, it was a CarMax auction house. which would have created a whole other level of issue, including noise pollution and all of these things that you would expect of business, an obnoxious business that is going to be, without question, causing a lot of noise, a lot of traffic, a lot of pollution, a lot of runoff. And so we were able to obtain 323 signatures, petition signatures, of abutters as well as homeowners in the area. It's kind of ironic if you were to look at the parcel of land, how many actually are affected by it. And it's strange that one house might look like an abutter, but they're not. And the house next to it actually is. And so ultimately what we're here for today is the idea that the CarMax auction house was allowed to withdraw their application without prejudice, which means that after, from what I understand, the parcel is being rented to National Grid for 3 years, in which case it's going to be nice. As of right now, it's nice and quiet, not to mention it's winter and you know, the windows are closed. Otherwise, it can be extremely noisy. And we have a lot of kids in all of these neighborhoods that are riding their bikes and everything that can be completely affected by the zoning that the current parcel is under. And so I think based upon the actions of the CarMax auction house and kind of kicking the can down the road, oftentimes requesting postponement, which actually prevented them from having to let the abutters know that it was going to be postponed. We can eliminate that altogether. And this is where Dan and George came up with this terrific idea as far as rezoning into residential space. We're constantly watching City Council and hearing about this affordable housing epidemic, and I can't think of a better location. And if you were to look at the parcel of land which Justin and the City Council office provided, it's a huge parcel of land. This is a huge parcel of land. I wish I had the actual number. So what we're trying to do here is just simply preserve the quality of life, as well as our home values, which, you know, the City Council so generously assessed this year. We would like to retain some of our property values, depending upon what is allowed to go in that space and what isn't. And I just want to reiterate that we are not anti-business by any stretch of the word. We're just looking, and we're hundreds and hundreds of people. We're looking to live a peaceful life and without problems. And I just, under the current zoning, can't imagine the way it is currently zoned for it to not be an obnoxious, to quote my friend, concrete factory, if it's not a CarMax auction house or, God forbid, an Amazon warehouse or any of these types of businesses that are going, you know, whose decibels of sound are, you know, going to affect everybody 3 seasons out of the year. So thank you for your time. I certainly have a lot more to add to that. If anybody's interested, I can certainly be reached. But I thank you very much for your consideration, and that's it. Please approve this decision with great haste. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Good evening, Roberta Bryan, Worcester Business Development Corporation. I'm here speaking in support of item 4, the tax increment exemption for the address of 401, 409 Main Street. Just a little history. Menkidi Group has been a longstanding developer in the city of Worcester. They came in over a decade ago. They've taken on extremely difficult, complicated projects. They've done a wonderful job at reinvigorating and adding more life and new businesses and new retail onto Main Street. They have made extremely conscientious effort in converting 401, 409 Main Street back to its original glory of a beautiful office building. Unfortunately, market conditions and changes and headwinds would not allow that. And as a last resort, have come forward to the city to seek assistance in order to create something with this parcel, which we're fortunate enough that this something is housing, of which our city so desperately still needs, and in particular, adding the density onto Main Street. I think it was a very intelligent decision on Mankaty Group's part. I think there are two issues, and one of which obviously people have spoken about, which is an issue of labor, an issue of a subcontractor. I think those issues need to be separated. Mankaty Group is smart enough to know they're going to be here in the city for a long time. They don't want to continue to have contentious dealings around labor issues. They want to continue to be welcome in the city, and I think that they're a great flag and representation for future developers, new developers to come in, and what we want to do is represent the city as welcoming and responsible. And I think the city administration, in particular Peter Dunn's office, has been very responsible in looking through pro formas and granting only the needed subsidy and assistance from the city to make this project work, while holding responsible development ordinance issues at heart and keeping their feet to the fire. I strongly recommend that this tax increment exemption be passed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Keith Linares, number 1 Jermaine Street. Speaking in opposition to item 4A to give the tie tax break to the Mankaty Group. As a taxpayer, I'm fed up with this system that creates a highly speculative real estate market while forcing residents to subsidize the profits of developers who repeatedly hire subcontractors known for violating our responsible development ordinance. Mankaty has a history of enabling wage theft, the literal stealing of paychecks from the workers building our city. We are told that these subsidies are necessary to incentivize growth, but we are really allowing government to meddle in supply and demand, and it keeps producing poor results for this city. The downtown first approach to incentivizing growth, combined with our exclusionary, rigid, single-use zoning in the neighborhoods, has created a highly speculative real estate bubble, not a well-functioning market. We see large luxury complexes sitting with high vacancies while residents are priced out. Last year, we saw Greystar Management Services, which manages major holdings here in Worcester like Alta on the Row, Colton Apartments, and the 600, settle a $7 million lawsuit due to a DOJ investigation into their use of price-fixing allegations. So we have price-fixing going on in some of these luxury developments. The housing market in Worcester is severely broken, and our city officials keep trusting the people who profit from its brokenness to fix it. So I have a few questions that I'm hoping the subcommittee can answer. Worcester needs affordable housing, so why do we keep subsidizing more supply for a segment of the market that is already seeing high vacancies? If supply and demand were truly working, you would not have so many high-priced apartments with so much vacancy. Supply and demand is supposed to even out. If you approve this, will there be a clawback provision if the developer or its subcontractors are cited for wage theft during construction? The city has the power to be a little bit tougher on these developers instead of acting so desperate every single time there's an interest in building in Worcester. And the developer claims that this project is financially risky without taxpayer help. Has the Economic Development Office conducted any independent analysis to verify that this project is truly not feasible without the roughly $600,000 in subsidies that they'll be getting? Or do you just take the developer's word for it every time? So I urge you not to give the tie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Fred Nathan Worcester. So I'm against this too. For one simple reason. You have developers that have been coming into the city for over 40 years. I don't know how many here have the good of memory, but I was here in the council when Jimmy Soffin came before the council, and it dragged on for 10 years. He finally built the Skylark Tower, but that was after just about threats from the city manager, the mayor, everyone here on this council telling them, well, you either do something or get off the pot. It took more than 10 years. And the city has to stop playing footloose and fancy-free. I would like to remind people, I don't know how many people honestly get the grip on this. Oh, sure, we built a lot of apartments downtown, but I wonder how many people truly realize that most of those apartments are rented by people who previously, maybe a matter of a year or two ago, were living in Boston. They now come here and they save themselves. Instead of paying $5,000 in Boston, they'll happily pay $3,000 and they have twice the amount of room, even if they have to take a train every morning to Boston and then in the evening back to Worcester. They don't care. They've saved themselves money because the train doesn't cost $2,000 a month. That's one point. Now I just want to jump ahead to the issue about the property there that they want to build the CarMax. I don't think anyone on this council or anyone here in this room, you know, they might have a family and they might be sitting by the pool and all of a sudden you hear this voice, do I have $500 for this gold-colored car? Do I have $5.25? Do I have $6? And go on and on up to gets up to a couple of thousand. And that will probably go on for 2 or 3 hours, at least one night or 2 nights a week. I don't know about you, but I would probably move out of the neighborhood if I was forced to listen to that.
Good evening. My name is Gemma Kamara, resident 7 Porter Street, Worcester, Mass. I am here in opposition also to item 4 against the tie. I want to say thank you, councilors. I want to be very clear that I'm not against development here in the city of Worcester. In fact, I am for Worcester growth. I'm also for investment in our city and also opportunities, and I welcome projects that will strengthen our community. What I'm asking for is responsible development, development that respects workers, taxpayers, and the long-term health of our city, which we desperately need. I have heard serious concerns about what has happened at 204 Main Street involving subcontractors who reportedly failed to pay workers what they are owed and did not meet their task obligations. I don't think we can have that in our city of Worcester, especially for folks that are working hard, desperately to put foods on their table. If these reports are accurate, it is not just a labor issue, that's a Worcester issue. It impacts the families, it impacts the local businesses that you all would say you care about, and ultimately it will impact our city's financial integrity, which we all here, I think, care about. So as we consider the tax relief or incentives for developers, I urge city councilors to make sure we are supporting partners who follow the law, treat workers fairly, and contribute to the tax base, and not ones who will undermine it. Responsible developers should not have to worry about anything. In fact, this protects them as well. All I'm asking is that the taxpayer-funded incentives go to projects that reflect Worcester's values and benefits Worcester residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening to the chair and to the members of the committee. Adam Baldarelli from Fletcher Tilton, appearing on behalf of the owners, A.F. Amarello and Sons, who are the owners of 34 Escow Road and 224 Southwest Cutoff. I'm here this evening to oppose the proposed zoning amendment, which is item 3B on tonight's agenda. Our clients' properties are 2 of the named properties that would be directly affected by this zoning amendment. The area proposed to be rezoned by the petitioners is approximately 32.1 acres of land. Our clients' properties constitute the majority of that land affected, I would say they are the owners of at least 75% of the total land affected. And throughout this entire process, dating back approximately 10 months ago, before April, when this matter was first discussed by the planning board, despite our clients being a property owner who would be directly affected by this proposal, not once were they ever consulted by either of the petitioners, not prior to the filing with the planning board, or in any of the 10 months after that planning board meeting in April. If they had been consulted, they would have said that this proposed zoning amendment goes against their express wishes and their desires as owners of the affected land. This petition appears to be in direct response to an application that was previously withdrawn, seeking to utilize the properties owned by our client as an auction house. In that instance, the applicant listened to the concerns of the abutters as part of the special permit granting process and withdrew the application in its entirety. I will note that this petition is an egregious form of spot zoning. It undermines comprehensive planning, creates land use inconsistencies, and is inconsistent with the surrounding area. That is because there is no relationship with any nearby zoning districts, as none of the land surrounding the proposed area to be rezoned is RL7. As a result, the amendment does not promote uniform zoning at all. It is spot zoning that creates a mismatch of split-zoned lots. A lot of those in favor in the past, at the past planning board meeting and perhaps tonight, cite the need for housing. But there is also a need for manufacturing spaces. Manufacturing plays its own vital role in building strong communities. It drives economic prosperity, creates job opportunities, serves as a hotbed for innovation, and drives technological advancements. It's not just an industrial space. It's an integral component of this city and of this community. This particular location is premier for a commercial use, given its location along Route 20. There is already a limited amount of manufacturing parcels here in this city. Portions of our clients' properties are already residential, RS7, providing an existing buffer for the abutters, providing the manufacturing and residential areas so manufacturing uses can continue to coexist here. I will also note that if the goal is more housing, this zoning amendment does not accomplish that at all. A vote in favor of this zoning amendment would cut off access to properties of Escow Road and Southwest Cutoff and make it so that there is no legal access to that property. So there would be no legal access for residential use, which would be the only permitted use if the proposed RL7 zoning district were to pass, which would be effectively a taking. Looking at the proposed RL7 zoning map submitted with this petition, the hatched area shows that the area to be rezoned leaves out a certain tail. Certain portions of our client's property that is part of Escow Road would remain manufacturing. So according to the proposed zoning map, a small tail portion of that manufacturing zone would remain. And if this zoning amendment were allowed, it would cut off access because there would be no legal access for the proposed residential purpose. According to the bylaws, a manufacturing district cannot be used for residential purposes. So one would not be able to travel from Escow Road over the tail end of that manufacturing zone remainder in order to access the proposed RL7. This was either purposely done to make the property completely unusable, so this amendment would pass, or it's a reflection on the zoning amendment that was rushed, not fully thought through, and not in collaboration at all. Our client is not alone in the reasons for opposing this zoning amendment. This matter was before the planning board, as I mentioned, last April. That board unanimously voted 4-0 to unfavorably recommend this zoning amendment. We share the concerns by the board and the members who stated They were not in favor of that zoning as it creates or exacerbates split zoning conditions and creates, quote, more messy zoning boundaries. They had concerns regarding split zoning. There were a few remaining manufacturing zoning districts left in this city. And despite the need for housing, there is also a need for the city to maintain space for employment and hold space for business purposes. There is a negative impact on the rights of the affected property owners to develop their land. So with that, I urge this committee to not endorse, to not condone this kind of activity, and to not recommend this zoning amendment to the City Council. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue
Next
Mailman.
speaker.
Hi, my name is Sue Mailman from Worcester. I'm here to speak against the Mankaty TIF. I would like to believe that as we learn about additional complaints coming through, some so blatant that particular contractors are not, the city doesn't even know or aware that they are working on the job, and without any compliance oversight, I would like to think that the chamber and the WBDC that spoke earlier and others would absolutely want to take another look under the hood to say, what other violations do we have from Mankaty? Everybody in this room wants more housing. These dollars are going to be needed for affordable housing, and we really have to focus. It's time that we did. I'd love someone on this council to ask for, so we know how many people are living in all these big developments, how many, we just heard the one, the Cove is full, Butter. Where is everything? We don't even have a sense of that as a city. Maybe you do on your Economic Development Committee. We're supposed to be about workforce development. These TIFs are supposed to be about economic development, which equals workforce development. This does not put local people on the job. This does, these contractors are not supporting apprenticeship and the stuff that we say we care about. So I hope you will absolutely deny this TIF. Thank you.
Good. Next.
Good evening. My name is Frank Gomez. I live in Worcester. I'm a business rep, organizer for the Carpenters Union. I'm here to speak against the Mankaty TIF. There are some serious concerns that we want to share with you guys. On February 8th, I met with 3 workers who performed work from September to November of last year at 204 Main Street in Worcester. This is a tax-funded project where Martinez Drywall was working. Each of these workers had filed sworn affidavits stating that they were paid with personal checks, had no deductions taken out, and were never asked to complete any tax forms. Martinez was operating as a subcontractor to a subcontractor under Barber Drywall. Martinez was never reported by Barber Drywall, the primary subcontractor, nor by D.F. Prague, the general contractor, as required. That appears to be a violation of the TIF agreement. To make matters worse, certified payroll records submitted on the project list Martinez workers as employees of Barber Drywall. If this is accurate, that raised very serious concerns, including potential payroll fraud on a public funded project. Thank you so much.
Before you finish, I just want to ask a question. Was any of this reported to law enforcement, such as the Attorney General's office?
Talking to me? Sorry, I don't know who's talking.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, do you know, was any of this reported to the Attorney General's office?
There was a complaint filed with the Attorney General's office, yes.
And what's the status of that, if you know?
I cannot tell you what the Attorney General's business is, but they took the complaint.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more members of the public?
Through the chair, at this time, it looks like there are 2 more members of the public in line, or potentially, are you, excuse me, sir, are you in
All
line?
right, so
Okay,
let me
3.
just make an announcement. Thank you, Claire. So we'll take the 2 members of the public that are in the building, and then we'll go online. We will finish at 6:30. That's a full hour. It's twice as much as we do for city council business. I put no deadlines on the number of minutes people can speak, but we will get started with the agenda at 6:30. So we'll wind up in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Ready to go? All right. My name's David Menasian. I live in Worcester, 6 Holbrook Drive. We've heard a lot about Worcester's Renaissance. We've heard a lot about the number of units being built, the number going through permitting. I promised I wouldn't, to some folks, that I wouldn't tell stories, but I'm sorry, I am going to tell a story. You might remember the Worcester Courthouse when that was under discussion. Some of you who are on council now was on council then. And I remember the original developer, Brady Sullivan, had a number of labor violations, had a number of environmental violations, one of them being taking asbestos over New Hampshire state lines and burying it in a project in Lawrence. And at the time when Brady Sullivan decided to leave, because they were getting called out on their labor violations and other violations, we were all told that project would sit there for 20 years. That's not what happened. What happened was Trinity Financial came in and did a much better product, a much better project than, I would clap for that, that's good. A much better project than what was there. I mean, the original budget was 20 million, 30 million, and Trinity blew that out of the water and got awards for what they did. Now, just a couple of issues I want to go back in time a little bit. In a letter dated in August of 2025, it was sent to the city manager, Barbara Drywall's attorney. Now, Barbara, as my colleague Frank Gomez just stated, Minkiti Group is the owner of 204 Main Street. DF Prey is the general contractor. They then hired, to my knowledge, Barbara Drywall, and then Barbara Drywall subcontracted some of their work to Martinez Drywall. So remember, at this time, there was a complaint filed for Barbara Drywall, was cited by the Attorney General's office, and that was a violation of the RDL. So in response, Barbara Drywall's attorney compared the Attorney General's civil citations to parking tickets. I'm going to repeat, parking tickets. The June 2025 citations from the Concord School project alone amounted to $83,000, $73,000 of which was for a failure to pay the prevailing wages. So in comparing its unlawful practices to a parking ticket, Barbara Drywall's response clearly does not take wage theft or worker exploitation seriously whatsoever. Barbara Drywall's comparison to its citations as parking tickets is inaccurate and quite honestly offensive. The Attorney General's issuance of civil citations for wage theft violations are actually an alternative to initiating criminal proceedings. And unlike a parking ticket, there are real victims here. Those are the working people who are affected by their wages being stolen. So in that same letter to the city, Barbara Drywall's attorney stated that the June 2025 citations were being appealed. Even if they are being appealed, the citation stands as is. The Attorney General's Fair Labor Division did an investigation. They had a result and a finding, and it was restitution in fines. Now, on 204 Main Street, a second complaint was filed, and Barbara Drywall once again was found cutting corners on a taxpayer-financed project. Barbara was subcontracted its work to Martinez Drywall. Neither Barbara Drywall, nor DF Prey, the general contractor, nor the owner, the Minkiti Group, reported the presence of Martinez Drywall on that project. That is a condition of the Responsible Development Ordinance. Now, upon notice of Martinez Drywall being on site, the city confirmed through the general contractor, DF Prey, that Martinez was indeed on site. But Barbara Drywall was submitting Martinez employees on its own certified payrolls. Let me say that again. An employer, Barbara Drywall, was filing certified payrolls, and in those certified payrolls, they didn't have their employees, they had another company's employees, Martinez Drywall, on those certified payrolls. Not only is it odd, but it's a violation of the RDO. And I could ask anyone who's run a business, who has done payroll, how many times in your reporting of your employees do you put someone else's employees on that list? Never. You don't do that. Okay? So, this is another, just this reporting issue alone is a violation of the RDO, which requires the accurate payroll information be submitted to the city. And by all indications, Barber is fully submitting inaccurate information. Now I ask you to think about, why would Barber deliberately, or maybe, deliberately hide who is working on their site? Why would they do that? Why would they submit someone else's employees instead of their own? And why is it so important, and I guess I will answer this soon, why is it so important to have accurate reports? In other words, why does the RDO require certified payrolls? Why do we require this kind of reporting? Because upon information and belief, Martinez Drywall employees are being paid by personal check without any statutory deductions. They are also not being paid by showing any tax documents or anything like that, or filling out any tax forms. So without those deductions, Social Security isn't getting deducted, right? Are they covered by workers' comp? I mean, there are a series of questions here on a taxpayer funding project that I think we need to be asking and we need to get to the bottom of. So I would say, why do we have these reporting requirements? Why is that violation important? This is exactly why it's important. It's important that we have certified payrolls on construction projects to prevent contractors from cheating. Now, these type of illegal business practices, it's an epidemic in construction. And I seriously applaud the city for its role in trying to prevent these practices. I respect all the city council and the city manager for instituting the RDO, for the Economic Development Office for trying to enforce the RDO. It's no easy task. I applaud this committee for taking all our concerns very seriously. And I just want to implore you, as you decide how you will vote tonight and what your actions will be, please recognize that by moving item 4A forward with no further actions, no further stipulations, you are consenting and potentially agreeing to some of the past practices that happened on 204 Main Street. And at the very least, you're saying tax fraud, wage theft, we need no further conditions in place. I have heard nothing else from the owner, that they would do anything in addition to what they have done at 204 Main Street. In my understanding, if history is going to repeat itself, the same thing's going to happen at 400 Main Street. So please don't look the other way. I implore you to take action, and I thank you for my time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience that wants to address the committee?
Through the chair, unfortunately, I didn't hear that. Could you repeat that?
Yes, is there anyone else in the audience that wants to address the subcommittee?
Through the chair, it looks like there are 2 or 3 more members of the audience that would like to speak at this time.
Well, we're not going to get to the people online, and I apologize for that, but nothing I can do about it. We're almost an hour into the public portion, so there are limits. Maybe we can get to some other people the middle or end of the meeting. I can't promise that, but we'll see how it goes. How many people left in the live crowd?
Through the chair, it appears that three members of the audience would like to speak.
Okay, well, we'll try to get those 3 members finished. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Don Shortman. I'm at 122 Weatherstone Drive. I sit on the Board of Trustees for the Weatherstone condos. So I'm speaking for 106 units, over 350 people. And we all categorically renounce anything that's non-residential in the Escott Road development. My condo, I walk out the door, that their land is where you are sitting at the front of the judge. So, you know, for them to have wanted to put on such an atrocity as that CarMax was gonna be, I don't trust these people to do any other kind of business around my front door. So I urge us wholeheartedly to go for the residential zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello. My name is Lou. Can I speak? My name is Lou Frymark.
Sure, yeah.
I also live in the Weatherstone community. I just wanted to speak briefly. I moved in 2 years ago. I've been living in Worcester for 2 years. I had a knock at my door one Sunday afternoon. It was this young lady, Carrie Schofield, knocking at the door, asking me to sign a petition because there was a CarMax going into the abutting land. I said, what? I never had any notice of that in purchasing my property. I was very upset, obviously. We did a good job, I think, of having the CarMax issue resolved. We're now dealing with another issue, which is creating a lot of noise. It's winter now, so there's not too much noise, but in the early fall, late summer, early fall, there was a lot of bulldozing going on. Nobody knew what was going on. There's a lot of land being moved around, and I'm sure in the spring that's going to resume again. So I'm opposed to this, all right? I'd like it to be a residential area. I disagreed with what I think it was the attorney who said that Escott Road can't be made an ingress roadway into a residential area. I think it could be widened. I've been up there taking a look at it, and I think it could be. It just has to be done contributorily by all the abutters and the people that have businesses there, and the city also. But anyway, I'm opposed to this. I'm in support of the zoning request that it be made residential in toto. All right? Just wanted to get my word in on that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe. My name is Joe Del Gizzi. I'm a resident of Worcester at 73 Brigham Road, and a member of the Carpenters Union, Local 107 before. It's 336 now. Dave Manasian is my brother, my friend, and my neighbor. I support everything that he just said. One of the things that bothers me is if you just Google Mankaty or Keller Williams, they are an extremely wealthy company, a development company. They obviously, I mean, started from, yeah, I wouldn't say started from nothing, none of us do, but have picked this jewel of a city that I live in as a place to make money, which is fantastic. But if you're going to do it, as somebody who's been in construction since 1986, I feel it every day, I'll be honest with you, and have been the victim of wage theft, and one of these gentlemen had said this, I mean, that is a real harm. Wage theft is, I mean, it's illegal for a reason. It's stealing. And when you're young or you're vulnerable or you're in this business because you love it, and someone basically doesn't pay you the right wages or keeps you off the books, and something that David said about not getting a workman's comp or insurance, you slip, you fall, it's a dangerous business. They'll just shuffle them. We don't know who those people are. Happens all the time, happens all the time on it's become a way of business for companies like Martinez and Barber and DF Prey. And the developers that use them, like Mankaty, make money. I think that as a resident, as a taxpayer, I do not want my taxes, my city, used for that. I think I speak against, have an unconditional tip for this company. I definitely am pro-development. Obviously, I'm in the development business. The American dream, as a friend of mine calls it. And we want nothing more than beautiful buildings, well thought out, and happy workers who are sharing in our community's wealth. This is a wealthy city. Obviously, Mankaty felt that way because they wanted to buy property here. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate your giving us that moment, and do the right thing, and just say to Mankaty, we want you to build here, but use the right contractors. Help the workers make money and share in this community's wealth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Darnell Dunn with the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce.
A lot has been spoken about 401 Main Street, item 4A. A couple of things I'd like to leave this body with. Upon completion of this project, if this tie is granted, the Minkiti Group will have invested $73 million in real estate in the downtown core of Worcester. When we speak about adding vibrancy and making Worcester an 18-hour city, a true 18-hour city, the Minkiti Group acts as landlords for Bank of America, Alma Gaucha, Work Bar, Team Rehab Physical Therapy, August Coffee, and are owners of the Chatham Lofts. 24 units of housing that was which is an adaptive reuse of the former YWCA facility. So they are continuing to add to the fabric of really what makes a city go. So we'd really very much like to see this project, in addition to adding housing and rehabbing a building, a beautiful building that was built in 1890. That's one of the things that makes Worcester special, is so many of these buildings that have character, that really give the city a character that people appreciate, that the residents appreciate, that companies and businesses appreciate. And that new people who will look at Worcester as an opportunity to live and work and play can see it as an opportunity. So thank you for the time, and hope that we see this go through.
Thank you. Claire, is that it for the in-person speakers?
Through the chair, it appears as though everybody in person that would like to speak has spoken.
And can you read the first agenda item that we haven't touched yet? I know we went out of order on it.
Through the chair, so we'd be looking at, the first item actually would be approval of the minutes.
Okay. Did you take a roll call on that?
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
Counselor Mitra?
Yes.
And Chairperson Counselor Bergman.
Yes.
And then after that, we took action on item 3A. Earlier in the meeting, a roll call was held. Item 3A was held. At this point, we'd be on item 3B, which is report
and
of
item 3B,
the
planning board, right?
through the chair. Yes, that's correct. So item 3B would be the item at this point.
Okay, could you read that, please?
Report of the Planning Board upon the petition of Councilor George J. Russell and State Representative Daniel M. Donahue request the establishment of an RL7 residential limited zoning district on the existing portions of the following parcels: 34 Esco Road, 224 Southwest Cutoff, Weatherstone Drive condos, including parcel to the west commonly owned with condo land, 35 Bayless Ave, 449 Massasoit, and 483 Massasoit. The existing RS7 zoning district shall remain unaltered, and the rezoning shall not include the portion of 34 Escrow Road parcel. Said proposed rezoning shall continue east along the southeast corner of the parcel at 449 Massasoit Ave, horizontally across 34 Escrow Road.
Well, other than the people who spoke from the public, is there anybody particular there representing any side on this issue? Is there any lawyers there representing the landowners? Is there anybody on behalf of the city representing the planning board? Anybody representing any side in particular?
Through the chair, I believe Michelle Smith is prepared to speak on that.
Okay, great. We'll recognize Michelle Smith.
Sure. Through the chair, this is Michelle Smith from the city's planning division. I'll give you a summary of the planning board report, which did include, for the council members present in terms of the packet materials provided, it did include 3 letters, I believe, of opposition that were received with the planning board hearing. So those will make more sense when I give you the summary of their recommendation, and then I'm happy to dive into the specifics of the nuances between the existing and proposed zoning, and it is a little bit complicated, so apologies in advance if this is long. So the petition itself is establishing a new node of the RL7 zoning district. So this is not an adjacent zone. This is a zone that's being brought to this area newly. It's intended to encompass a portion of 7 different properties over approximately 32 acres. Those properties are 34 Escow Road, 224 Southwest Cutoff, 11 through 244 Weatherstone Drive, which is essentially the Weatherstone Drive condominiums, as well as a parcel that's wooded that's associated with that ownership. 35 Ballas Avenue, which is a residential property at the end of that street, and then 2 residential properties on Massasoit Road, 449 and 483 Massasoit Road. The petition seeks to rezone the portions of each of those properties that's in the manufacturing limited 0.5 zone to RL7. In addition, it seeks to rezone the portions of 224 Southwest Cutoff and 11 to 244 Weatherstone Drive, seeks to rezone the portions of those 2 properties that are also presently split zoned but located within the MG2 zone, seeks to establish the RL7 in that same area. And then finally, a portion of 34 Askow Road that is presently located in the MG2, with the exception, as was referenced by the landowner, one of the landowners' council, this sort of tail, which if you look at the map that was included, prepared by our office, Askow Road appears to almost extend in kind of an S shape further to the north. There's a small section of that that's presently zoned in the MG2, which would remain unchanged as the petition is currently proposed. So that area is intended to stay. So all of the property of 34 Askow Road that's presently located in the MG2, with that exception, would be proposed to be included in this residential limited 7 district. So those properties are all split zoned, as you heard through my lengthy summation there today. There's a mix of different zoning districts on different properties, 2 or 3 different zones depending on the parcel, which is summarized in the proposal. The planning board's recommendation was unanimous against this change. That's somewhat unusual. Generally, I would say the planning board's recommendations are favorable or favorable with a dissent, so it is unusual. In its discussion, just highlighting the reasons here for you, the board specifically found that the change would not promote uniformity in zoning. Instead, it maintained a split zone condition for each property affected, and it actually increased that condition for the property at 34 Askow Road, where a small portion of that parcel, again, what I was referring to, that facilitates access, would remain in the MG2. They specifically expressed their concerns that the change was inconsistent with recent infrastructure investments to utilities, sewerage, and Route 20, and the area's potential and partial designation as a transformative growth area in the citywide long-range plan, Worcester Now Next, citing that this area is one of the few that's left in the city for manufacturing, and noting its importance and the significance of retaining that zoning for facilitating employment. It also questioned if the change could be considered spot zoning and emphasized concerns about the negative impacts the change would have on the property owner, specifically 34 and 224, in terms of using their property for the historic business manufacturing purposes that would generally be allowed. So to elaborate specifically on what this change actually materially allows, the establishment of the RL7 zoning district. This is our third least dense zoning district in the city. So it is the second most dense residential zoning district, but essentially this only allows 2 units by right. So you could have a duplex or a 2-family. Anything denser than that requires special permission. So a 3-family or multifamily low-rise would be other residential uses that would be allowed in that zone, but only through special permit. Today, in the manufacturing zoning, residential uses are not allowed at all, and we just don't allow residential uses in manufacturing zones, recognizing kind of the challenge of the different uses and the juxtaposition of those uses, as you heard from residents with concerns about their location, juxtaposed on one another. So we really have something that allows very low density residential development that's being proposed in an area that currently allows sort of our highest density, most polluting manufacturing uses that are available through our zoning code. So very different provisions in our zoning that would be enabled or lost through this change. And that has implications for dimensional reasons as well, but specifically on the uses, I think that's important to note. In terms of dimensional requirements, there, again, variety of changes, just given the nature of these. In manufacturing districts, we generally regulate density through floor area ratio, or sort of a ratio of building square footage to lot square footage. In residential zones, we regulate that based on lot area and on frontage. So there's a nuance to how you kind of look at the two, but essentially the manufacturing is more permissive today, the residential would be much more restrictive. 65 feet of frontage, 7,000 square feet of lot area for a single-family home would be required in the RL7 zone. Manufacturing districts don't have requirements for frontage or lot area today. In terms of height, residential district generally limits things to 2.5 stories or 35 feet, with some exceptions for higher density uses. And there's a full table that compares these uses that's outlined in the memo, which is table 2, if you're interested to look specifically at all of the nuances there. Setbacks are generally something that is less restrictive in the manufacturing district as compared to the residential district, with the exception that there actually is a higher front and rear setback in the manufacturing 0.5 zone today than there is in an RL7 zone, so what's proposed. So essentially that band, if you look, there's a gradient of zoning. There's a darker blue, which is closer to Route 20. That's the highest density manufacturing zone we have. And then there's essentially a buffer or a gradient of lower density manufacturing zoning that's shown in a light blue as it extends north along these properties, getting closer to the residential neighborhood. And then that part of the residential neighborhood is in the RS7 district, which is not proposed to be changed by the proposal.
Okay. I appreciate that. Councilor Toomey, do you have any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just curious in terms of, I know that there's certainly, when I proposed originally to have the sewerage put into Route 20 years ago, upon the suggestion of former Councilor Paul Clancy, who was advocating for that as well, that we knew that this was our last really area of potential development in the city, and certainly needed to be done. But that also didn't mean that we would abandon our residents. And so I'm asking about, in those areas where we have residential areas near some of these properties, I know this isn't the only area along Route 20, do we have the possibility of expanding a buffer zone and to require trees and plantings and things like that?
So through the chair, generally speaking, the zone changes the zoning district and it can't be conditional. So if you wanted to allow a buffer would be either a different zoning district that would allow something less dense potentially, but there is no way to say, for this zone change, the property owner must put X number of trees in this specific location. That's not the way these types of petitions work. They're to allow any of the worst potential uses that are allowed in that zone. You have to assume that could go there. Through the change, in this case, sort of the opposite of what you often see, which is a petition to make something more dense. In this case, it's going to something that's less dense, so you would need to evaluate the impacts of that change from the business and manufacturing use permissiveness that exists today to something that is really, again, single, 2-family zoning or special permit for anything more. So you could seek to modify or change the petition to adjust what would be being proposed to be rezoned. So instead, if you felt like you wanted to leave existing manufacturing zoning but establish a greater residential buffer, you could petition to change that. I don't know if the law department would opine that such a change might be significant enough to warrant kind of circulating through the various different hearing processes. I'm not sure of that. I haven't seen a proposal change this far in kind of the process with that scope of a change. So it's certainly something we could find out if that was the desire, but I'm not sure exactly.
I just wanted to know if that was something that was done, so I appreciate that explanation.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Mitra?
Mr. Chair, understanding or listening to everything, I think certainly this amendment, I don't think it will promote any uniformity in the zoning, and it will be inconsistent with the infrastructure To me, it certainly looks like it's more of a spot zoning than anything else, so I'm not very comfortable with the change that they have proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions through the chair to our city solicitor. Is our city solicitor, Carl Kunis, there?
Through the chair, the city solicitor is not present at this time.
Not present this time. Oh, so maybe I can ask this through, I'm trying to think, who's there for planning? We just had a representative from planning there.
Michelle Smith's more than happy to attempt to answer any questions.
All right,
Mr. Chair.
Michelle, you're on deck. So here's my question. I heard the argument about spot zoning, and I'm sensitive to that. Do you know if this zone change lingers, we just leave it alone for now, and it lingers, does it, and we need to do something with it because of some proposed use, would it take effect once it's filed, or would it only take effect once it's pursued further? Now, what I'd like to do is protect the neighborhood without getting the city in any difficulties regarding spot zoning, but I'd like to do it in a way that doesn't cause a problem by leaving it hanging out there. So there has been a request for a zone change. So what's the significance of the date of that request? Does it matter or does it not matter?
So through the chair, it's a little bit tricky to answer your question. There is a significance associated with the date of first advertisement as it relates to the zone change becoming retroactively effective. If there is not a concern about the change becoming retroactively effective, then I don't think it would have much of an influence. I'm certainly not an attorney, so I may be amiss, but that's my general understanding. There is once it's been advertised for a hearing, basically someone couldn't try to sneak in a subdivision proposal to modify or freeze the zoning once that first advertisement has occurred. But I believe if something sits for too long, that retroactivity may be lost. And I don't know the specifics of that. I think some of that may be interpreted through case law. So I would defer to our law department on that.
I could do a chairman's order on that, but as far as you know, I know there's a lot of people there that are interested in this issue. As far as you know, has anybody applied for anything to be done in that location since the failed attempt at the car auction?
Through the chair, there was a preliminary subdivision that was filed with the planning board and conditionally approved. That has, I believe, since expired. However, it doesn't mean that they would not refile the same petition, the landowner. And that specifically was for 34 and 224.
How would the zone change affect that?
My understanding is at this point in time, were that petition to be filed, it would not be, essentially the subdivision would not freeze zoning because they've lapsed in their period that once, essentially a preliminary plan will allow for the zoning to be frozen. So a subdivision plan can freeze zoning. The intention of subdivision control is pretty permissive with respect to development. So the intent is to give the developer certainty as to how they can use their property as they proceed and progress their plans. So the preliminary process can initiate that. The definitive process, the definitive subdivision process has to conclude through to an approval in order for that sort of freeze to be effective. At this point, the preliminary plan, I believe, has expired, so they would need to submit a new plan. If that were a definitive plan that would freeze zoning, come back to the day that it's filed. So if this change was retroactive, there may be an influence there. My understanding in speaking briefly with the law department on this is at this point, they don't believe that if a plan were to be filed now, that essentially it would be that we would have an effect of this particular petition. But again, that's at this moment in time, and I think that could change, and I certainly don't know if they would file a preliminary or definitive, but I certainly think it's a reality given the fact that they've previously filed for a preliminary plan.
Well, I'd like to file a chairman's order asking the law department to answer following question or questions, and that is, what consequence is there in holding the item before us as far as protection for future uses that are inconsistent with the neighborhood's wishes? So Claire, did you get that?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you. Is that, do my colleagues, Councilor Toomey or Councilor Mitra, have any questions they would like me to ask as chairman's orders on this?
No, Mr. Chair.
No, Mr. Chair.
The ideal scenario, and we'll finish on this, we're going to hold this. At least I'm going to ask my colleagues to hold it. The ideal scenario would be that we don't have to do anything to protect the neighborhood because there's nothing pending, and we can always come back and vote on this. And then we don't have to run the risk. My concern is if this is spot zoning, and there's been discussion about that, and we push the envelope and it's determined to be spot zoning, then there's absolutely zero leverage. City of Worcester, City Council, Economic Development Subcommittee, Planning Board, Zoning Board has in preventing something happening over there that the neighborhood won't like. Because now it's been determined to be spot zoning and we can't do it. I don't want to push that envelope, whether it is or isn't, if we don't have to. It doesn't make sense. So right now, nothing's happening. Right now, we have something to consider doing, and we can continue to consider doing it. And we'll get some more information from the law department, and then we'll make some further decisions when we get that information back. That's how I feel about it. I don't think there's any pressure at the moment to make an immediate decision without having all the facts. So, Councilor Toomey, Councilor Mitra, do you have anything further to add? To my motion will be to hold.
No, I'm comfortable with that, to what you're asking from the solicitor to give the answers.
That's appropriate.
Claire, could you,
Mr. Chair.
could you,
Through the chair, if you'd like a roll call for hold.
yes, would you do that, Claire?
Holding item 3B, Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Mitra,
Yes.
and Chairperson Councilor Bergman.
Yeah.
Okay, that passes, so it'll be held on a roll call of 3-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda?
Through the chair, the next item on the agenda is item 4A. Recommend approval of the Housing Development Certified Project Application / Tax Increment Exemption Agreement for 401 to 409 Main Street.
Okay. Is there anybody on behalf of, so I know Peter Dunn is there. Is there anyone else there on behalf of the city of Worcester regarding this issue?
Through the chair, you are correct in that Peter Dunn is here.
Okay. And the McKinney Group, is there anybody there representing them?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Peter Dunn. I know from the Menkidi Group, we have the president of Menkidi Group, Caroline Kenny, who is joined with us virtually via Zoom. And then in the audience, we have John Daniels from the development team in person. And I know Bo Menkidi, the principal, wanted to join us, but he is traveling overseas at this time.
Okay, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of questions. So we'll settle in and we'll expect a good discussion. So does somebody want to start off with a presentation?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. If it works for you, I can give an overview of the communication from the administration that's before the committee, and then I believe Ms. Kenny has also prepared some brief introductory remarks on behalf of the Menkidi Group, and then from there we can certainly, answer questions of the committee and continue with the discussion. Does that work for you?
Okay, so I'll just ask my colleagues to do what I'm going to do, which is take notes on questions, and then we'll let the presenters present, and then we'll address their presentation with our questions. That way, we won't interrupt them, and we can also get a good chunk of questions in with a good flow of information.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No,
Before, I'll give a quick overview of the item before you. So the administration submitted a recommendation for the council to consider the attached resolution to designate the 401 to 409 Main Street property as a certified project under the Housing Development Incentive Program, which, as the committee and the council, I'm sure, is familiar with. The Housing Development Incentive Program is a state program focused on the creation of market rate housing units in gateway cities across the Commonwealth, and it does allow for mixed income developments in addition to its priority for market rate projects. And at the local level, in order to demonstrate that support before any developer could seek the state benefit, which is a tax credit, there needs to be a tax increment exemption agreement between the municipality and the developer. And so before you is our recommendation for a tax increment exemption agreement on this property, commonly referred to as the Shacks building. Historically, it's known as the Clark Block. Again, the address being 401 to 409 Main Street. The proposal that the Mankitti Group has for this property is really what's been very frequently talked about in the post-pandemic environment, as we saw the impacts the pandemic had on commercial office space throughout downtowns, and also the need to address housing, the housing needs of communities, this real paradigm of office to residential conversions. And so with the upper floors being underutilized office space, the Mankitti Group has proposed a conversion of that office space into 48 units of mixed income housing, along with existing commercial uses on the ground floor with Bank of America. Of the 48 units, it'll be a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom apartments, 5 of which, or 10% of the units, will be deed-restricted affordable housing at the 60% area median income level, and that deed restriction will be for at least 30 years. So as you might all remember, as we look at the city now has an inclusionary zoning ordinance, and one of the things that we've tried to prioritize in understanding there are a variety of ways of complying with inclusionary zoning. We know some of the greatest needs in the community are at the 60% area median income level. So they've chosen that option for compliance at 10% of the units, or 5 units, to be affordable at that 60% area median income level. And then also one of the things that has been a priority of ours, and certainly many community partners, and I know the council as well, is with respect to the city of Worcester having a very old building stock. The majority of our housing units were built prior to 1978, and as such, most of our housing stock has accessibility challenges, and so we have been prioritizing the creation of ADA accessible units. Just by way of background, some of you might be familiar with these types of projects, new housing developments. Typically, the building code requirement would be 5% accessible, and they are committing to exceeding that base level requirement by delivering 4 ADA accessible units at the property. And to highlight the investment and the terms of this proposed tax increment exemption agreement, the total investment necessary to undertake this conversion of the office space to residential units is approximately $27 million. That results in a significant cost per unit exceeding $500,000 per unit in terms of the investment necessary to make that happen. And we look at the some other numbers related to that. We always run, as part of these assessments, what is the current value of the property and how does that investment translate into an increase in value at the property. So the base value today is about $1.5 million, and the total value after construction is estimated to be $13.7 million. So a substantial increase in the assessed value of the property, helping to stabilize the property for one. Again, as we've seen with the impacts of the pandemic and underutilized office space, it results in properties not reaching their full potential in terms of its contribution to the city related to taxes. And while that is a substantial increment, and recognize that, it also kind of speaks to why these types of projects have a need for subsidy in order to be viable. Again, when you think about the investment necessary to make this project happen being $27 million, and based on the income that will be generated from the property, the opinion of our city assessor is that the property will be valued at $13.7 million. It's a really challenging thing to assemble financing for a $27 million investment on an asset that will be worth $13.7 million. Our recommendation for the terms of this tax increment exemption agreement is a term of 10 years, and the average annual exemption being 35% of the new value. So again, this investment results in a substantial new value and new taxes to the property, and the way the mechanics of this program works is that the city can offer a partial exemption of the new taxes over a certain period of time. So it's not a cash outlay to the project. It is not exempting or providing any tax break on the current value of the property. It's looking at what will happen if the investment occurs and providing a partial exemption of that new taxation for a certain period of time. One of the things that I know I did mention at the council when this was first introduced, and as it relates to how we evaluate these requests and look at the underwriting and review development pro formas as we consider the request for this type of support. I do recognize, just as we look to the east of Worcester in the city of Boston, which, as we all know, is a much stronger real estate market, there are frequently greater returns because we know that how prices are even more substantial in Boston than they are here, and making sure that we're, I don't think we want to be there. I think we already know certainly the cost pressures that our residents and our community faces, and so not trying to say that that's something to strive towards or that we're trying to go there, but I do recognize that the city of Boston has a stronger market, so you would think these types of projects would be more financially feasible in a market like Boston, and the mayor of Boston has offered these types of exemptions for office to residential conversions being 75% for 29 years, essentially. So I think that's just, a reference point that could be valuable as we think about our review of these projects. What is the need to make these projects viable, and doing that negotiation with these applicants where we settled on this recommendation of a 10-year term for a 35% average exemption over that term. When you look at the total savings, the local property tax savings, it's about $61,000 a year. So in total, it's about $610,000 over the 10-year term, or about $61,000 a year. And as it relates to what that savings looks like on a per unit basis, it results in a local tax savings of approximately $12,775 per unit created. I think that's also important because I know there was some comment too about reviewing these and independent analysis, and coincidentally in our memo to the council, while we don't send off for sort of third-party review or independent analysis on each and every project that we look at or every project that happens in the city of Worcester, there was an independent analysis done by Mass Inc. And so many of you might know the Research Institute at Mass Inc., and they produce a Gateway Cities Housing Monitor report. And as part of that independent analysis, that third-party report states that the average rental housing project in Worcester would require an estimated subsidy of $257,000 of subsidy per unit in order for that project to be feasible. So I know that we, are blessed to have a lot of projects underway, a lot of projects in the pipeline, and I know that there is a perception that some of the developers are sort of making money hand over fist in the city of Worcester, but the reality is that that's not the case, and these projects are extremely challenging to get accomplished, and it's why you also see for a number of these projects a significant amount of time necessary to arrange for the financing to carry these projects out. In the case of this project, what the Mankitti Group has been doing, as many have seen, the investment made to date with the commercial use on the first floor, as well as restoring that facade to its former glory. For decades, it was covered by the particle board that covered the beautiful historic asset in downtown Worcester. So making that investment prior to getting to this stage out of their own pocket. And then also, one of the things that can be very time consuming is how to assemble historic tax credits. So a lot of these adaptive reuse projects of historic buildings and completely modernizing an old building to today's codes, and also achieving those things that we want to see, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's accessibility, all very important things, but it results in a substantial amount of cost for these projects. So a lot of the historic adaptive reuse projects also rely on historic tax credits, and unfortunately it takes a significant amount of time in order to secure those. And so that is what has been the effort over the last few years of the Mankitti Group to bring them to where they are today. And I think they're in the kind of final stages of hopefully filling the remaining gap on the financing, including with this request before you. And then moving forward from here, if the committee has a favorable recommendation, obviously it goes back to the city council for a final vote, and then the Mankitti Group has to complete the process for the overall state program with the state Department of Housing and Livable Communities as well. So that's an overview of the sort of the terms and the highlights of the communication that's in front of you. I know we'll certainly be talking about some of the concerns raised, and happy to answer questions related to that. I know we talked at length at City Council in January on that topic as well, but happy to answer any of those related questions from
We're
from
gonna
the committee.
get to that next. I like to try to do this in sections. So as far as the overview, Councilor Toomey, do you have any questions of Mr. Dunn?
Regarding the overview or in general?
Yeah, everything he said just up until now.
Okay. So I do have a couple of questions. One is, certainly this is a unique project in terms of the transfer from commercial to residential. How many other projects do we have in the city that are doing that right now?
Through the chair to the councilor, there is one notable project that's actively under construction, or actually I would say two, is the two projects in downtown known as 1 Chestnut Place and 2 Chestnut Place. The 2 Chestnut Place is also referred to as 22 Elm Street. So the council will remember, most people refer to that property at 1 Chestnut Place as the former Fallon Health building. Their lease came up for renewal in 2023, I think it was, and they did not renew the lease at that building. They ended up going to the other building on Mercantile Street downtown. And so the owners there, Synergy Investments, which also owns the Glass Tower here in Worcester, decided to pursue a residential conversion of that property. It's actively under construction. It'll result in 198 units. And then they've partnered with the Planning Office of Urban Affairs out of Boston, which specializes in affordable housing, on that smaller building at 22 Elm Street. It was sort of all part of one complex at the time when Fallon Health had occupancy there at both properties, and there were a couple other tenants at 22 Elm Street. Beautiful historic building, and they are converting that in partnership with the Planning Office of Urban Affairs to affordable condos, which will be unique. It's the first project of its kind that I can think of in downtown Worcester, where not just having the opportunity to see for sale units, but also for sale units at affordable pricing. And that is only, able to be accomplished because of the subsidy involved in that project as well. Particularly for the condo project, the Commonwealth Builders Program of Mass Housing seeks to see affordable for sale product in gateway cities primarily. And so those are two that are actively underway. There are others that have been considered and looked at. The other one that I believe is now under construction, they started to do some preliminary work, is 57 Exchange Street, also known as 1 Exchange Place. So that's a project that the council last term supported as well through this program. And they are gearing up to get into full swing construction in 2026 as well. And then there have been other projects that have been talked about, and certainly other projects that have been executed upon that have been successful. But those are just some that come to mind initially.
There are special constraints and things like that it's not just a regular project. There's a lot of things, the balls that have to be held up in the air at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm looking at the numbers, and it's like, how does this pencil? What's the incentive for a developer to do these projects?
Through the chair to the councilor, yeah, it's obviously a very challenging time for office space in particular. So while the costs are often significant to undertake a office to residential conversion, as you mentioned, one of the key considerations too is just the architectural aspects of the property. Some buildings are just not designed; they don't lay out well for that type of a conversion. And so you do see some properties that just will never be considered due to that fact. But one of the other things that is more predictable is that the demand for housing we know is substantial. We have a shortage of housing today. I'm not aware of any high vacancy rates that were referenced. We have persistently low vacancy rates in the city of Worcester. And one of the reasons why we embarked on the housing production plan that was adopted by the planning board and council in 2025 was to build upon the Worcester Now Next citywide long range plan and say, okay, we know there's housing scarcity, we know there's a shortage, but as we move forward and as some of these programs are going to become more scarce or stretched thinner because both the city and the state and the federal government had pandemic relief dollars, a lot of which have been used to stimulate housing production. As those are exhausted or come to their close, there's going to be more limited resources. So we need to be as strategic as possible in the allocation of those resources moving forward. And so we took a deep dive through the housing production plan to understand, okay, what is the units that need to be created, what are the most persistent needs or most glaring needs of the city, both in terms of rental, for sale units, senior housing, affordable housing, really across the gamut, and making sure that we're then leveraging the resources that are available to prioritize those projects that are most addressing the needs of the city.
So there's only 5 of the units, of the 48 units that are deed restrictable at the 60% area median income. And is that the only way that they could afford to do this, or is there any reason why there weren't more? Or
Through the chair to the counselor, when you look at a housing project, there's really, I guess, what I would say is maybe 3 primary tracks that you consider. And speaking only to rental housing at this moment, because the for sale product is a whole kind of class in itself. And so when you look at a housing production project that's going to yield rental units, you could consider unrestricted market rate. You could consider mixed income. Certainly now in the city of Worcester with inclusionary zoning, we've pressed that further on the development community to really look at those mixed income projects. And if they choose not to put the units in the project, we do have the option for payment in lieu for compliance under inclusionary zoning. But I think establishing that as a city has really pushed the envelope on mixed income projects rather than just 100% market rate or unrestricted housing. And then you have really true affordable housing projects that are much more substantial and usually in excess of 50% of the units being affordable. And the financing pathways for those 3 tracks are very different. And so as we've seen, and it's a kind of an unfortunate irony that the units that are probably most in need, the affordable units, particularly at deep levels of affordability, take the longest to accomplish in terms of assembling the financing and usually the subsidy programs necessary to carry them out, and they typically are more expensive. So it would be great if affordable units, because they're most in need, would be the quickest and the cheapest and the fastest to get online. But unfortunately, because of a lot of what's involved in the subsidy programs and stitching together multiple sources of capital, in one case, it's usually not just one program, it's several programs that are supported locally and at the state level and at the federal government. If you're going to pursue a project that has more substantial affordability, it's going to take even longer to do that. And for some projects, they need to just decide what is the most advantageous pathway forward for that project. And in the case of the project that's in front of you, it's a mixed income approach. So really making sure that we have some affordable units in that mix, but a predominantly market rate project, which again, for some of the programs that are out there, there are certainly more available programs in terms of just the quantity of programs for affordable housing. But the particular program that we're speaking of, the Housing Development Incentive Program, is by nature a market rate development program that allows for mixed income as well. But the priority for that program is market rate units.
the only other thing that sticks out at me on this part of the report, and I, through you, Mr. Chair, I do have other questions for other issues, but this is on this presentation. The electrical upgrades that we're dealing with National Grid and with the downtown redundant vault system, have we been able to get any more, efforts from National Grid to work a little bit more affordably with us, or,
Through the chair to the counselor, we do have a real challenge in the city, as I'm sure many other cities can attest to too, as it relates to electrical infrastructure, both the cost of the bills that our community is facing, but also in particular, sort of in our day-to-day work, is the cost of upgrading or creating new service to support development projects that are adding significant loads to the network. And in Worcester, we have what's called the Downtown Redundant Network Vault System, which has some great benefits. It has, because of the redundancy, as the name suggests, it's very reliable. It's very unlikely that you would see power outages, certainly not power outages for any extended period of time downtown. And I think when it was created decades ago, it was in recognition that the downtown has real critical infrastructure that needs to have that reliability and that redundancy. What comes along with that is the complexities of that system. And of course, it's all underground. And it's very costly to do these types of upgrades, both to the vault as well as the transformers and the equipment that is in the vaults. Based on other projects that have been undertaken in the downtown over the last several years, the estimated cost for a vault upgrade in the downtown, it doesn't matter how big your project is, it's just if you're triggering a vault upgrade, it can be close to $1 million with National Grid to do that vault upgrade. So when you have projects that are much larger in scale, maybe they can kind of absorb that, because maybe in the residential sense, on a per unit basis, maybe it's $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per unit. But when you start to get into some of these smaller projects, ones that I would argue are just as important because it preserves the existing building stock, the historic assets that we have, well, the building is already there, so it's only going to support so many units. So in the case of 401 to 409 Main Street, it's going to yield 48 units, but the cost of that vault upgrade is not going to be any different. So it's harder to then absorb that National Grid cost in the project budget because there's only so many units involved. The other issue is that just as National Grid approaches these, what they call complex construction projects, is they're regulated, as everybody knows, by the Department of Public Utilities and the tariffs. And so what it basically says, I'm just going to kind of summarize this in a nutshell, is that when somebody is triggering that new service or upgraded service based on the loads, they calculate what that total investment is for the infrastructure and then bill the proportionate amount or the due amount to the developer or the end user, because they're the ones requiring that investment in the system, rather than, which has typically not been viewed favorably by the Department of Public Utilities, is just socializing that cost among all ratepayers and making that bill very cheap for developers, because at the end of the day, somebody needs to bear that cost, and if it's not going to be that requester or that developer, it's going to be the rest of the ratepayers through socialization. And so National Grid typically puts the majority of that cost onto developers. They do look at, in some cases, what's necessary in terms of if their side of the equation is out of date and requires some level of investment, there will usually be some contribution there from National Grid on what they feel like is maybe their kind of responsibility, if you will, as well as what they call a revenue justification. So they do look at, okay, we're going to have new ratepayers, in this case 48 new housing units, and they'll have bills and they'll be paying in to the entire system. So they do provide some level of offset as a revenue justification, but it doesn't change really the average net cost that we're seeing in the downtown of close to $1 million for a vault upgrade.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Councilor Mitra?
I think your microphone needs to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Dunn, I do have other questions also on the other issues that many of our residents brought up, but as far as the presentation of Mr. Dunn goes, I would like to ask a couple of questions to clarify what I understand here. Mr. Dunn, very nice presentation, of course, but it looks like that in 10 years, Mankato Group is going to get the tax advantage of about $613,000, if I'm not wrong.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And then the amount that you have there, 1.4 million or 1,420,612, that is the tax that city will be getting. Is that in 10 years, that's the revenue that city will have?
Yeah, through the chair to the councilor, and just so if anybody's following along, we provide a schedule of what would be the total taxes without any benefit from the city? What would be the total taxes with this benefit? And then also, what are the savings? And so, Councilor Mitra, yes, that's correct in that if we move forward under the terms of this agreement, the amount of tax revenues received by the city over the next 10 years would be about $1.4 million.
That's the estimate that we have.
Yes, that's the best estimate we have right now.
And if we did not do this project, for example, what would have been cities on the way the property is right now on that value, what would have been the tax revenue?
Yes, through the chair to the councilor, if this project did not move forward under its existing conditions, we would estimate to receive $227,000 over the next 10 years.
Okay. The $600,000 that benefit that the Mankato Group is benefiting from, the tax benefit, again, is that something that we calculated using some formula, or that was their need? They calculated and told us that we have a closing the gap, we need about $600,000 worth of tax break, or we have some ways to determine that?
Yes, through the chair to the councilor, that's a great question. So as I mentioned, the way the mechanics of this program works is that it's not a cash outlay, right? So the estimated savings of $613,000 over 10 years is not something that they can use, for example, to finance the construction activities, right? But it is calculated in the pro forma as they look at, once this property is brought online, what is the income that the property will generate, what are the operating expenses, and what's left over to pay debt service, as well as other types of expenses other than the operating expenses. And so we know what lenders are typically looking for as they consider permanent financing of these assets is to make sure that you have what's called a debt service coverage ratio of at least 1.2. So they want to make sure that you're not just going to have enough money one-to-one to pay the loan back, that you're going to have some cushion so if things don't go so well, that it's a 1.2 ratio to make sure that after paying those typical operating expenses, you have enough money left over to pay the principal and interest of that loan. And what developers can then do is back into the loan size that they can achieve based on that requirement from the lender. And so in this case, and this is kind of, again, speaks to the overall need for subsidy, is that for the $27 million investment, even with this savings that's going to help improve that debt service coverage ratio, the maximum loan size on this project, the amount that it could support, is about $11 million. So they have to raise $16 million in equity, their own equity and other sources of equity, as well as the subsidy, in order to cover the entire investment, because based on the income that the property will generate, it can only support a maximum loan size of about $11 million, which you can do the rough math, that's less than 50%.
So have they gotten some kind of approval from any bank about the $11 million? Or we will just wait to see?
Through the chair to the councilor, so I usually at this stage they've had good conversations with potential lending partners through existing relationships and local community banking relationships. But for that, where that stands and what lenders they might be speaking with, because there's not, obviously, since this is necessary and there's no activity happening yet, they haven't closed on the final financing. But this is one of those remaining pieces that I think lenders are probably asking them if they will be able to secure as part of the whole package. But I would defer. I know, again, that we have some representatives from the Mankato Group, and I believe for the financing question, Mr. Daniels could probably answer that question for us, but defer to the chair in terms of when it's most appropriate to have the Mankato Group answer questions.
Because I think that certainly would be, primary question for us to see that we are financially strong, the developers are able to complete the project. So I probably would be having some more questions later on, that what we have in the contract, that in case the project is not finished because of the financial difficulties that has happened in many cases in the past. I was in planning board, I have seen many times the developers come in but they fail. So we will certainly, I believe, will have some kind of contingency that if not, then what would be the consequences that the developer will face. I know that Mankato Group is very well reputed and they have done a great job for many of the projects in the city, but still for us to protect ourselves, I'm certain that we will have that kind of clause in the final contract. And again, I'm also wondering, what is the maximum percentage of affordable housing that we can request for? Or what is our policy? This is 10% of 48 units that they're giving us 5. Do you have a range, like 10 to, or 10 is the minimum percentage that we ask for?
Through the chair to the counselor, so under the terms of the Housing Development Incentive Program, the state program, it has some requirements, and because that program is primarily geared towards helping market rate housing production in gateway cities, it has to be at least 80% market rate. So it cannot be more than 20% affordable. And as we review projects, we review them all on a case-by-case basis based on, again, the financing, the need for subsidy, through the lens of inclusionary zoning and our priorities. And so what we arrived on with the Mankiti group was 10%, but it is 10% at the 60% area median income. So one of the other options for compliance under inclusionary zoning is the 80% area median income, which is not quite as affordable as the 60% area median income, and they would be required to do 15% if it was at the 80% level. So we wanted to make sure that we were really prioritizing that 60% AMI level, which we know is even greater need in the community than the 80% level.
Do we know what is currently the vacancy rate of the rental units of the market rate? Any idea?
Through the chair to the counselor, we typically are able to get vacancy rates on a community-wide level. We could do project by project, but it's hard to isolate just like a certain segment of the market, like newly constructed market rate, if we don't just kind of try to gather that information kind of anecdotally or through primary source by reaching out to those owners. And so the vacancy rate overall in Worcester has been persistently low. Last year it was less than 2%. I think it has crept up a little bit, but it's still less than 5%. I think it's closer to 3% right now. In the projects that we have worked with before that have been constructed recently, our understanding is that they are all stabilized. So typically you would see a natural rate of vacancy at like that 5% level. And when you have vacancies less than 5%, you start to see that kind of scarcity impacts in terms of increases in rents, as well as we've seen with the home sale market. You know, when inventory is not there, you see prices start to go up. And so 5% is really a healthy vacancy rate, and usually stabilization is considered anywhere, less than 10%. And so we've seen success and stabilization of the projects that have been brought online. Usually they look at a 12-month kind of time frame to get to stabilization because it takes time to lease up. And we've seen that kind of level of success. The larger one that just recently got brought online, they got their certificate of occupancy right before the new year, is the Poet Hill project, which was entirely privately financed, entirely market rate, about 210 units, I think it is, over off of Gold Star Boulevard near the Shaws. They just started leasing, so I don't have good numbers on that because it's so early on, but typically the time horizon that these projects look for to reach stabilization is about 12 months of leasing.
A couple more questions through chair to Mr. Dunn. I also understand that when we give them this tie, the exemption of the taxes, they're also going to get some credit from the state. Am I correct? What is the total bundle? What is the total benefit they're having? 600 in the tax advantage. What is the credit amount that amounts to? Do we know?
Sure, through the chair to the counselor. So once there is local support through a tax increment exemption agreement, it allows them to be eligible to apply for that tax credit. There's additional processes that are done at the state level in terms of reviewing projects, their requests, the amount of dollars that the state has, the amount of applications that they receive in any given round. For the last few years, they've been doing cyclical rounds, so you don't apply on a rolling basis. You have to apply competitively, and then they review the relative merits of projects against the other applicants in that round and the total dollars that they have available. And so what we've seen in recent rounds is, tax credits ranging, on the kind of most compelling projects between really $2 to $2.5 million on successful projects, but depending on, again, the size and the nature and obviously what's being requested, they could range for much smaller dollar amounts, but usually not in excess of $2 to $2.5 million from the state.
Is it a credit they get, is just like not the cash, but they're getting the credit in their taxes? Is that, what's the credit that they're getting?
Through the chair to the counselor, the way the mechanics of tax credits typically work is that they're transferable, right? So if they're awarded to a developer, certainly the developer could claim that tax credit against its tax liability, in this case at the state level. If they do not have that tax liability with the state, then it's transferable. So they end up monetizing it to somebody that does have that tax liability and can claim that credit, and then they get the proceeds from that other investor effectively into their project. And usually it's not at a 1-for-1, right? So it's usually a certain percent on the dollar. And so I believe it depends on certain underwriting and market conditions and all of that, but I believe right now for Worcester projects, the amount of proceeds that you're seeing going into a project on a tax credit basis is less than 90 cents on the dollar.
And Mr. Dunn, if approved, again, I have many other questions regarding the issues that were brought up. What do you think the time frame that this would be done? Any discussion on that?
Through the chair to the counselor, as I stated too, this is one of the kind of final pieces that they're working on to kind of close this overall capital stack, and their intention is to then be able to execute on the final closing this calendar year and get started this calendar year.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Thank you. Appreciate your answers.
Thank you. So let's get into the meat of the matter, so to speak. Some of the allegations that need to be addressed. So, Mr. Dunn, I don't know if you have a suggestion of who might be best to respond. Perhaps it's you. I probably think it's somebody from the McKeedy Group itself, but this whole discussion, allegation, concern that's been raised about a subcontractor violating rules and making payments without properly ascribing them to the right contractor, and running afoul of some of the programs we have by having to pay a penalty and so on and so forth. I'd like to hear the versions from the McKeedy Group of what they say has happened, and whomever is in the best position to give us that narrative, I'd like to hear from them.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to weigh in from time to time as questions come up from the city's perspective. I know we described a little bit about that when I was before the city council, as this was initially transmitted to the city council, and certainly there's been other conversations since that time frame in January, but I do think it's probably the appropriate time to kind of turn it over and introduce Caroline Kenny, who's the president of McKeedy Group, who is with us on Zoom to maybe share some remarks as well as answers to the questions in particular that you were referencing related to the current project at 204 Main Street.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me? I'll ask that first.
Yes.
We can hear. I can hear you. Can everyone hear her?
Through the chair, yes, we can hear Caroline.
Excellent. Thank you. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like the opportunity to provide just a little bit of context for our company and background of investment in downtown Worcester, and then would be happy to speak to any questions related to the allegation.
This is likely the agenda item that has the most interest citywide. So we don't want to be here all night, but we're going to take our time with it, and we're going to give it as much time as we need. So don't feel rushed. Just do what you need to do to make some explanations, because I'm sure we're going to have plenty of questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, as Peter mentioned, my name is Caroline Kenny. I'm the president of the McKeedy Group. I'm standing in this evening for our founder and CEO, Bo McKeedy, who's out of the country. And I'm joined by John Daniels, our vice president of investments, who is attending in person. Thank you so much to the members of the Economic Development Committee, the Executive Office of Economic Development, the City of Worcester, and all of the stakeholders gathered here this evening for the opportunity to share about our company's commitment to the redevelopment of 401 to 409 Main. Just a little background on our company. Over the past 22 years, we've been engaged in community-centered economic development across neighborhoods in the Mid-Atlantic, New England, the southeastern United States, and we've invested over $400 million in low to moderate income urban neighborhoods with the mission of harnessing the power of real estate to transform lives, careers, and communities. It's with that ethos that we brought our organization to Worcester over 8 years ago, and that's really driven our commitment to and investment in the development of downtown. We are a responsible investor and developer with a demonstrated track record and commitment to the city's responsible development ordinance. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions that we want to discuss related to that. Since 2018, we've invested in projects representing over $50 million in value, and we've got another $120 million of projects in the pipeline. For each of those projects, we've used financing tools that are similar to those contemplated for 401 to 409 Main. And I should mention that we do have several letters of interest from banks who would like to provide the $11 million in construction loan that Peter mentioned. And we have experience, again, with the other various tools that would be used to be able to finance the entire project. We're a leader in transforming vacant property on Main Street, typically through adaptive reuse projects that preserve the city's valuable historic resources and character and deliver much needed housing and amenities. We remain committed to Worcester through the economic challenges of COVID. We had lots of retail leases that fell apart because different restaurants went out of business or didn't move forward. We've stuck with our projects in Worcester. Through the challenges of COVID and extraordinary post-COVID cost inflation levels, we've delivered 44 apartment units and 90,000 commercial square feet in 4 projects to date. 3 of our projects have been recognized with Silver Hammer Awards, reflecting excellence in historic preservation, development, and execution. And in 2022 and 25, our projects were recognized with Preservation Worcester and the City of Worcester Historic Preservation Award. We've attracted anchors like Bank of America and Work Bar to downtown, increasing foot traffic, economic activity, confidence in the district. We've brought healthcare and retail amenities, including Team Rehab, Almagaucha Steakhouse, and August Coffee that will be opening soon. And just as importantly, we've created transit-oriented, affordable, and market-rate housing. All of these successes work together to create a live, work, play downtown for Worcester and reflect years of coordination with city leadership, community stakeholders, and regulators. As I mentioned, we are a responsible investor and developer with a demonstrated track record and commitment to the city's ongoing revitalization and its responsible development ordinance. We're proud of our work in the city and look forward to continuing it with the redevelopment of 401 to 409 Main, which will transform a currently obsolete office building into 48 new mixed-income units. The tie agreement that has been submitted to the committee for approval this evening is a critical step in bringing the project to reality, both as part of the financial structure of the project and insofar as it's a prerequisite for additional critical state of Massachusetts support for the project. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share more about our company and this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all have. And between my colleague John Daniels and I, we'll take questions and certainly defer to Peter where appropriate.
All right, so I'll start off, and then I'll move on to my colleagues. But I'm assuming you've heard much about the use of a subcontractor, a plastering company, who's paid a fine for their use of a subcontractor. And I'm wondering what your explanation is for how that came to be, because I'm assuming it's not something you're happy about.
Sure. So the initial complaint that was filed, and this is specific to Barber Drywall. They are a subcontractor that our general contractor hired. And I think it's important to note that we make the responsible development ordinance a contractual requirement in our agreement with general contractors. They are ultimately responsible then for hiring subcontractors and ensuring that there's compliance on the job over time. And then if there are any concerns observed by us, by the city, raised by anyone else, we take them really seriously and look into them immediately. So in the case of the initial concerns raised around Barbara Drywall, I think it's important to note that these citations were for projects other than 204 Main, so not our projects. And they were not things that had been raised when the initial subcontract was executed with them. And then in terms of the issues, 3 of them that are sort of most significant are allegations that Barbara Drywall is in the middle right now of appealing. 2 were sort of lower dollar value, and Barbara made the decision to pay fines related to them. We made the decision on this project just when the concerns were raised that it made the most sense to pay the fine in order to just get the project into compliance as quickly as possible, while we are tracking the resolution of the concerns with Barbara that are right now making their way through the appeals process. It was only just over a week ago, maybe 10 days, I have to look at the exact date, that we were made aware of the concerns with Martinez Drywall, who was raised in several of the testimonies this evening. And between us and the city, we immediately said to DF Prey, again, the general contractor, listen, we need to understand what's going on here. There's records of payroll and sign-in sheets, and they are going through a process right now of reconciling that to report out to us so that we then know what actions we need to take. But they're digesting all of that information, again, to respond to us and to the city right now. And I was not aware, the one other thing that was, so we were aware of the concern related to Martinez Drywall payroll records. We were not aware that the testimony this evening related to folks who were paid with a direct personal check. That is new information as of today, and so that's something for us to follow up on immediately.
Are you aware of whether or not the Attorney General's office was notified of any of those issues?
I don't actually know. And Peter, I don't know if that's something that you're aware. It's not anything that we've been made aware of yet. I did hear someone in their testimony say that they had been, but it's not something I'm aware of yet.
Okay. The second question I had is on the drywall issue. Were those issues related to your relationship with them prior to working in Worcester, or their relationship with another contractor prior to both of you working in Worcester?
Yeah, those were on other projects. We were absolutely not aware of this when.
So you weren't working with them when this happened?
No.
Okay. And the only other question I have for the moment, I'll let my colleagues weigh in, is when you paid a fine or paid fines, were there findings of responsibility, or were there some sort of resolution where there was no finding of responsibility? You paid a fine and everything was resolved.
Peter, I might need you to help me with the technicalities of this.
Yeah, I can answer that. Mr. Chairman, so I think what you're referring to, it's important to be clear about the different sources of the fines and who they're levied against. And so what I think is referenced often are the kind of 5 citations the Attorney General had with the subcontractor Barbara Drywall that were levied against that subcontractor. But again, as that issue was brought to our attention and then our determination was made under our responsible development ordinance, the ordinance calls for our enforcement action, our kind of non-compliance process with the developer who we have an agreement with. And so we were the ones that issued the Mankitti Group a $5,000 fine, and that's what's been paid to the city, and the fine, again, that was levied against the Mankitti Group. And I would say that what is maybe open to interpretation is what else is necessary, or what other actions should or could or will the Mankitti Group do to, I guess, for for lack of a better word, like bring the project back into compliance. I think that there was reference at the city council meeting in January about, should that subcontractor have been dismissed from the job? I think that's open to interpretation. I think that's one option for sure. It's not specifically, I guess, called for in that way under the responsible development ordinance. It's really, when you get into the section, and I'm not sure if the council has, really reviewed the language of the ordinance in depth, but it's in each of our agreements. So part of the attachment is a draft agreement of what this would look like. And so that's where you can find all of the language of the ordinance. And so that whole section around corrective action and remedies is that if a non-compliance situation arises that we see, we would issue a letter, first kind of letter of non-compliance, and with that there will be a $5,000 fine. And so that's what occurred this past summer in August. And then I think what's kind of, I guess, a little unclear as it relates to, you've heard that like some of those citations, the more significant ones, are under appeal right now. So I guess, do we wait for the appeal process to play out before, requiring the Mankitti Group to take other action related to that? We haven't really been in this, I guess, the ordinance is fairly new, right? It was established a couple of years ago by the council. And so this is sort of like a little bit of uncharted waters. It's not like we have precedents to rely on in terms of what's next, but that's where we're at.
I appreciate that. You answered probably a lot of what I was curious about, but the one thing that maybe you don't have an answer for that I was really trying to get at is, do you know how is it characterized, your payment? Is that an admission of guilt? Is it a dismissal upon payment of a fine? Maybe it's a lawyer in me, but I like to categorize what was that? Like sometimes you pay a parking ticket, it says right now I'm not admitting to anything. Sometimes it says this is an admission that I spent. I'm just trying to find out what. Maybe you don't have an answer, but what did that mean in your eyes that you're paying it? You mean you did something, or you're just trying to resolve this and you're not admitting to anything? You're just paying a fine to move on. Hello?
I'm sorry,
sorry.
I wasn't sure who that question was for.
Well, anybody that wants to tackle it. I know it's not an easy one to tackle. And maybe if you don't have an answer, that's fine.
I can tell you that the spirit was not pay it and move on. It was really, it's important to us for the project to be in compliance. And I am actually looking right now for the paperwork that would answer your question about what exactly paying the fine and
because it's been characterized, maybe rightfully so, as somewhat of an admission that something was done wrong, and therefore it's hard in some people's minds to argue that, there was this level of innocence in all this because you paid a fine, so you must, and you admitted you did something wrong. But I know that sometimes fines are paid as kind of like a compromise resolution to something, so I'm just trying to find out which it was. And if you don't have it handy, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. We can get the answer another time.
I don't have it immediately handy, but I'm going to keep looking for it in my emails while we're talking.
I'm going to let my colleagues ask some questions, and if you find it while you're addressing their questions, then you can just let us know. So, Councilor Toomey, please ask away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to say unequivocally that to not pay people their benefits, to not have the documentation, be legally done is ridiculous. It's basically abusing people, and it's something that, as some, I signed the Responsible Development Ordinance, something I certainly don't approve of. That being said, are these two totally different projects that we're talking about? Three, actually, because you talked about projects that were not actually in Worcester. And then also there was a $5,000 fine for Worcester with Barbara Drywall, correct? And then there was another one that was we just came out February 5th that Mankitti Group's not aware of. So it's now, couple of weeks later, or greater than a week later, and why wasn't Mankini Group made aware of that previously?
Through the chair to the councilor, Ms. Kenny, I can start on that, and then if you want to add anything, that would be fine. So I guess starting with the last half of your question, and there were a few different things raised, right? So we received an official communication from the Carpenters about their review of the daily login sheets on the job at 204 Main Street, and then cross-checking that with the payroll forms, and the identification that there seemed to be some inconsistencies in terms of those names that were appearing on the project that day, and then cross-checking that with the payroll for that particular week, as well as what was described of Martinez Drywall sort of doing some of the scope, working as a lower-tiered subcontractor under Barber, because we were getting all payrolls from Barber Drywall as the prime drywall subcontractor on the job. That was communicated immediately to the Mankini Group, and Ms. Kenny referenced that she was aware of that, and that's what they've charged their general contractor with, getting them a response as to what's going on related to that. The piece that is new information for which I don't have any documentation, and I know it was referenced, and maybe this is an answer to a secondary question that was sort of alluded to earlier, related to things that may have been sent recently to the Attorney General, and to your point on the commentary about being paid in personal checks and payroll tax implications or benefit implications. We are aware of that through the conversation that just happened, as well as I spoke with one of the representatives late last week on Thursday afternoon about it, but we don't have those materials in front of us to provide that along to the Mankini Group and say, you need to review this information and address this. So there's kind of like, I guess, two, as Ms. Kenny was describing, almost like two related issues to this Martinez Drywall topic. In terms of these projects, what ones are they, what ones aren't they? What's in front of the committee today is a project proposal that has not started for the what's known as the Shacks Building, 401 to 409 Main Street, that the Mankini Group has proposed. That's what's in front of the committee. There's a connection, a logical connection here, right? Because the same program that they're looking to participate in for 401 to 409 Main Street is the program that they're actively participating in 204 Main Street. So I think where the concerns are, and I even included this in our memo, is the recognition and acknowledgement of the status of that project at Main Street, because I think, again, putting the two together, we're working with a developer on that. It's the same developer that's seeking additional participation in that same program on this. So there's like a logical connection, but it wasn't, I guess, it wasn't our intention to, I guess, adjudicate or litigate all of the ongoing situations of 204 Main Street. I think it's valid commentary. Concerns are totally valid. We are very much committed to making sure that every project is successful and every project is adhering to the responsible development ordinance. But as you've heard, there are some things that may or may not have been sent to the Attorney General that was, identified in the last week. There's information from the fall related to the citations that are currently active under appeal. So some of the stuff that I refer to is like kind of still, I guess, open to interpretation, as we don't have precedents of like another project that had the same situation that we can look to that and say, this is what needs to happen on this, is kind of, I guess, where we're at in terms of what further actions might be necessary of the Mankini Group to further resolve, some of the stuff that's been brought up related to 204 Main Street. But a lot of that is like actively in progress. So I just don't know that we can, come to the bottom of it at this hearing tonight. We can continue to have the conversation and talk about the implications of it, or what has happened or where things are at, but I just don't know that we're going to I guess come to a resolution on that particular question here tonight.
So thank you. And Mr. Chair, it's clear to me that communication is key here between the city, between the Mankini Group and the Carpenters. And I think that's a critical element. And also through the Attorney General's office, and just making sure that all of the, I's are dotted and T's are crossed. We don't want this to happen. I can't imagine that Mankini Group wants it to happen. I can't imagine that their general contractor wants it to happen. The issue I see is in the subcontractors and then the subcontractors. And, excuse me, if there's a way for us to be able to really drill down, to be able to not delay any corrective action when something like this comes up, then I think that's behooves everyone, because none of this should be happening. The other aspect, the other question that I have is, you know, preventing all of this, and that's being assertive. Have the carpenters met with Mankato to talk about this particular issue and/or talk about, do the carpenters even have a list of folks that they approve? Is there a list of people that they know they have issues with that maybe we don't know, that's not on the Attorney General's list? You know, I don't know. I mean, are there other people that just haven't been brought to the Attorney General's point of view that we're not aware of, that maybe the carpenters could share? These are folks that we know that there are issues with, you know, so that everybody's working together, as opposed to, well, we found this bad thing that happened and now we don't want you to do this. How do we work together? Because we want our local people to be employed, right? We want our local contractors. We want our minority women veteran-owned businesses to get jobs, all of those things. How do we work together to solve this instead of a gotcha, right? That's my big question. And I think that's something that needs to happen, so that we can continue to move forward. I mean, clearly it's good that we're talking about adding some affordable housing, because we certainly need it. We don't want to leave the building empty. Because that's not good for development for Worcester. But how do we all work together to make sure that we're on top of these types of things, and that word gets out to these subcontractors and sub-vendors that it's not going to work in Worcester, right? You can't do that stuff, and we just have to. Do we have to look at maybe penalties, increasing penalties, or, you know, that's a question that I think is reasonable to really make it difficult for those subcontractors, so that they're not doing this in the future. I think what's also important is, as I said, is the communication and making sure that we know who the good contractors are and who the bad ones are, and that's important. Why, the other question I asked, why not a meeting between the carpenters and Mankato? Is that something that would be amenable? Do you
Could
think?
I address that one?
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. We have
Yeah,
met, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, please address that.
Okay. We have met over the past 60 days, 3 times, once the small group, once with our chairman and founder, once with me, 3 times over the last 60 days. And we agree, we specifically said, hey, we'd like to make sure that whenever there are requests for bids going out to the subcontractor population, that we make sure that we have clear channels to make sure that those get to union shops. Mr. Menasian has actually offered to introduce us directly to several general contractors who are signatories to the union. And we said, yes, send them our way. He actually already sent me somebody on Friday, this past Friday, who I'll schedule a meeting with. So we agree with the open communication. The focus of the conversations has been more making sure that those lines of communication are open. We agree with that and embrace the opportunity to continue strengthening those channels of communication.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
And just through the chair to the council, I just wanted to add a couple of points that I just don't want to be, I guess, lost in some of it, because we certainly don't want to see any project kind of go sideways or have any issues that need to be addressed. But I do want to recognize, and I think we, very much appreciate how far we've come with this type of requirement, the enforcement, the monitoring. If you look, 10 years ago, we didn't have any kind of policy, and I would say that the lion's share, if not all of the communities that participate in TIFs and ties across the Commonwealth do not do what we do. And it's because of the commitment both of the council, the administration, working with community partners. And I think as we look at even, this issue that still needs to be potentially addressed further related to the active project at Main Street, I think the ability for us to even be aware of a potential issue there and having documentation then that can be sent to the Attorney General office if necessary to get to the bottom of something like that, because again, they are the enforcement agency. I think some of our community partners and myself included would love to see, their more prompt action on some of these things, or maybe not such a high bar in Massachusetts to get certain bad actors on the debarment list, because the debarment list carries a significant weight associated with it, more so than the civil citations that are being addressed or talked about tonight. But I just think that enrolling projects in this program has the benefit of just getting the documents, getting that oversight, getting the monitoring that our department provides, so that we can keep an eye on these things, because we want to make sure that any investment that's happening in the Worcester is a good investment, and that the workers that are helping to build that project are taken care of and are treated right. And so we only get that level of documentation and have that level of oversight if they're enrolled in a program like this where the documentation is required, because there's plenty of private jobs going on in the city right now, totally privately financed, that this kind of behavior could be happening that we will have no knowledge of and won't be able to assist any community partners in addressing those issues. So I just think that it's recognizing kind of where we're at in the work that's gone into with, again, everybody. It's not just our department, it's the council, it's the administration, it's community partners, it's the development community, because I think we've always felt like this type of requirement shouldn't be viewed as punitive, that it really is about all of us kind of working together to make sure that projects are as successful as they can be and that workers are treated correctly. So
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Mitra?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to President Kenny or Peter Dunn. Again, I would just like to mention that no matter what we do, I think keeping high standard, high ethical sense is of paramount importance to no matter what project we undertake. And we know that. And I'd like to see that we maintain that in whatever project we're undertaking. We have heard many of our residents come and talk to us about this particular project and the issue and the allegation that they brought up against the Mankato group, or the ethical sense of wage theft and that kind of thing. I'd like to hear from President, that what's your policy of monitoring the contractors that you hire? I know at the end of the day, we are working with Mankato Group. So Mankato Group is what we are related to, and anything that we find that is happening to your contractor, it's probably not that we know so much that you know. So my question is, how do you monitor what they are doing? Are they keeping with the compliance that you have given them, assigned as a contract? And do you have any kind of stern policy that if we find doing something beyond or against or not complying with it, you will have this punishment or this kind of penalty? Unless it is brought up reactively from someone to the Attorney General, we would never know. So what's your policy to see that your contractors are doing the right job? And I'd like to ask Mr. Dunn that, can we put in our contract with Mankato Group that if we find something like this is happening, if we offer them this opportunity, then the tax incentive that we are offering, they will all be automatically revoked. That we need to see that there is some kind of stern guidance that we give to contractors that we offer this job, because to me it is very important that we do maintain that contractors that come to us, when they follow our RDO. That's why it is created. I know it is, we are all, swimming into something new, learning the process, but once we have it, we have to adhere to it and making sure that every player that is working with us comply with it with a very strict policy that we put together, that if you do not follow this, and if we find something like this happening, it's one thing to find them and get rid of all those things and saying, okay, we're even. But I think if we do something that if we find this happening, you're not within compliance, I think your contractors are your responsibility, then we will have to revoke this tax incentive program, but you still have to complete your job. So not that we want to work friendly in a friendly way, but I think business-wise, anytime you do a business, you do put a contingency, and I'd like to see that we do put some kind of a stronger contingency with our contractors, whoever we give. I know Mankato Group has done a tremendous job. I know their reputation. I've read about them. I've also heard Mr. Bo Mankato speaking at one of the events, and I was very impressed with his philosophy, with his willingness to help the community, his willingness to bring this Worcester in a different level economically, and I really liked. But I don't want to see that. I know it is not him or his company, but the people that you hire, you have to monitor them, that they are also doing the job in a way that the people that you work with, like us, we're also happy. So I'd like to have some comments from Madam President and also Mr. Dunn.
I can share a couple of things on our end.
Please.
First, I do think it's important to keep in mind that the citations that have been issued, that have been raised, were not on our project, and they were issued after the subcontract had already been signed and our project had started. Sort of our opportunity is, as we are going to contract with a general contractor and we're reviewing the subcontractor bids or the list of subcontractors that they're planning to use, that we would screen for any violation like this. So that's something you would do up front. If a violation is issued once your project is in progress, that's where you need to look into, okay, what's really happened. And as we shared, again, these citations were on another project. 3 of them are in the appeals process, so you have to wait for that to sort of go through the appeals process. And then 2, we asked for a comprehensive explanation, and Barbara Drywall explained that the 2 citations that they did ultimately pay a fine for were designated as non-willful or unintentional, so that's why they made the decision to pay the fine. But I think to your question about what we can do proactively is make sure that all subcontractors are screened in that early process. It would not have prevented this issue because these citations occurred after Barbara Drywall was already signed up, again, on another project. And then, we and the city take very seriously the most recent claim, and that's exactly why our general contractor owes us a follow-up and response on the most recent payroll questions that have come up, and we just don't have those yet. Mm-hmm. I would be concerned about, and Peter is much more sophisticated in this area than I am, an official sort of clawback provision, because I think that would make it very difficult to get financing commitments from all the other sources of funding that you have to sort of put together to make a project like this work. They would be concerned that if the tax abatement were to go away on a given project, you would not have the ability to pay your mortgage. And so it could really threaten the ability to get any project like this financed and under construction.
I hope you don't have that situation.
The screening we talked about.
And through the chair to the counselor, just to answer that part of the question a little bit more specifically, is in the responsible development ordinance, we do have that clause actually. It talks about, failure to comply with the ordinance or as a result of the, project monitoring and reporting if the project is failing to meet the requirements of the ordinance, in addition to the letter of non-compliance and that $5,000 initial fine that we had referenced earlier. The city does have the ability, and it's very clear in terms of further action, to potentially reduce or revoke the local tax benefits. What the ordinance talks about, that would be our policy related to that, is that we would have to review the severity of those non-compliance issues in determining, whether that additional action is necessary and whether it would be like a recommendation to reduce tax benefits or revoke tax benefits. We've, in my experience, had that situation occur once with the Unum building, as you might remember, just a couple of years ago. We terminated that TIF early. We didn't claw back all the tax savings that were provided to date because they were in compliance for many years on that building, but we terminated it early due to the non-compliance related to the jobs and what kind of we look for in commercial TIFs. And so we haven't had an example yet where we've worked with the council, because some of this is a give and take between the recommendations from the city administration, but also various requests and the input from city council as well related to these projects. But we haven't had an example where, because of something that happened during construction activity, where we've reduced or revoked tax benefits on a project. We've just had a couple of examples on the fine being issued. So that's something to keep in mind moving forward, but it is contractually in the ordinance and in the whether it's a TIF agreement or a tie agreement. To Ms. Kenny's point, I think, if we were to execute on something that, particularly the revocation versus a reduction of tax benefits, we should be very thoughtful about that, because it would result in what Ms. Kenny was talking about in terms of if their tie agreement, in this case with the Housing Development Incentive Program, if their tie agreement was terminated, then they're no longer eligible for that tax credit at the state level, which would have much bigger implication in the overall financing, and then certainly implications with the senior lenders on the project related to the ability for anybody to cover the principal and interest on any loan associated with the project. So if we were to kind of go down that path with any project, we would want to do so deliberately and thoughtfully.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Dunn, this project was initiated by Mankato Group to us because they're doing 204. They came and said, we'll do this project also, or it was a RFP that we had sent and they are one of the candidates?
Through the chair to the councilor, we don't do requests for proposals in this sense. We would do requests for proposals if we were disposing of a city-owned property or potentially a property owned by the Worcester Redevelopment Authority. So we do that often as it relates to development kind of opportunities that we might control the land or control a building. And I think it's been referenced recently that Mankato Group currently has what's called a land disposition agreement with the Worcester Redevelopment Authority for the Denholm redevelopment. So that was a RFP selection process where we reviewed proposals that were submitted for that redevelopment opportunity and selected them. So that is currently under agreement. They're doing due diligence and the like. I know we're not here to talk about the Denholm, but that is something that would have fallen under that request for proposals process. What happens with the Housing Development Incentive Program and these requests for tax increment exemption, or similarly on the kind of commercial real estate side of things with the tax increment financing TIF requests, those are often submitted to the city, requests for that level of support on a rolling basis. So we see those types of inquiries from companies and projects and developers regularly. And then we go through our kind of internal process in evaluating the merits of the request, the need for the subsidy, the alignment of a project with our stated priorities and goals as a city for these different programs. And then go through that negotiation process, essentially, if it is a project that we feel like is aligned with those priorities, and then negotiate that, come to a recommendation for the council to consider. I know I referenced previously that it doesn't always get seen, because what gets seen is what comes to the council. The final recommendations, when we are looking to when we do get to this stage and want to work with a project, that's what's seen. What's unseen is the many calls and different kinds of inquiries that we get for projects that never come before the council because it was maybe not aligned with our agenda or our priorities, or maybe, the financing or the pro forma, had some issues related to it as we go through that review. And so it's not like we just, put a cover letter on something and submit a request to the council without doing all of that work on the back end first.
Mr. Dunn, what you mentioned to me that if the building is not done and stays the way it is, our tax revenue is about $227,000 in those 10 years.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah. But if the project is given to a contractor like Menkiti or any other, and if it is completed the way we see it, then our tax revenue will be about $1.4 million after the tie we have given.
Through the chair, that's correct. The only thing I would caution on that is that you had mentioned like the Menkiti Group or other projects or contractors. This estimated value is based on the specific project that's in front of us, the number of units, the rental income from the units. So if there was some other proposal, all of those numbers could look differently if it was going to be something else. Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it looks like that at the end of the day, certainly city is going to benefit, not only that we need homes, we do have some affordable housing here, we do have at the end of the day, tax benefit for 10 years, and beyond 10 years, then we get the full tax credit, right? So, the only thing that I would like is that, to asking the Madam President again, that I'd like to see that, like Councilor Tomey mentioned, that it's our project, and I would like to see that our city is involved, our employees are getting a chance to work. I'm glad to see that, they have met with the Carpenters Union, because I would like to see that we're all working together. Our employees are also getting a chance to work for our project. Is that going to be a possibility, Madam President Kinney? That we involve everyone in our community, those who get the opportunity to employment for this project?
Yeah, we will certainly, there's always the opportunity for union and non-union shops to provide subcontractor bids for a project. And so we will absolutely, we're not, just to be clear, we've done, we went through a process with 6 general contractors, and through pricing and understanding of the scope, sort of narrowed it down to 2. And we won't go back out to bid again until we've got more of the overall financing pieces of this project put together. But we will absolutely, when they are ready when we're ready to sort of go out for that next round of pricing, because you have to be careful not to do it too often because you don't want to exercise subcontractors. We will make sure that through the union channels that folks in their shop are made aware of the opportunity to bid along with others.
No,
and I would, if I could, just mention that one other success that has occurred on this project, and this is reported through the city's workforce diversity reporting in January, is we have achieved over 30% of the subcontractors on our existing project, 204 Main, being minority business enterprises. And so both the commitment to soliciting subcontractor bids through union shops and non-union for this project, it stands. And we also want to continue having that kind of success with minority business enterprises as well.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your answers, and as I said, working together is what is our goal, and also keeping the high ethical sense and high standard. No matter what project we do, we'd like to see that no matter who does our contract, you have that, and I hope that you will look into, no matter which project you do, that your contractors are within compliance, because that becomes, you have a wonderful reputation. You know that. Winning Silver Hammer Award twice in our community talks for itself. And at the same time, when we hear our community comes and talks to us about the unethical thing or things that like wage theft and things those are which are not under compliance are being done under your supervision, it feels bad to us because we recognize you as a high standard worker and community helper and giving our community a great boost economically and otherwise as well. So we like to see that you do watch that and do a job with more ethical sense and give us the way you are doing things as you have always done with many other projects to us. And thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dunn, for giving us the things that we want in the contract.
Thank you.
Okay, my question to Mr. Dunn is, what is the time sequence of moving this to a vote? Is it needed tonight for a particular reason? Can it take a little bit longer? Where are we at with the timing of it?
Mr. Chairman, of course, up to you and the committee, but I can just tell you where things stand with the current round of the Housing Development Incentive Program at the state level. So that is a cyclical type of program. It's not a rolling basis. And so they have an active round right now where projects would have to demonstrate the local support, certainly by March at some point. They don't have a specific date. They say that they're looking at potentially making awards for this round, sometimes either, I think it said end of March, early April. So if we did not demonstrate any kind of local support and participation for this, then the Mankato Group would be ineligible for this round. And it's the state has not announced what the rounds will look like for the rest of 2026 at this point. I think a safe assumption is that they'll probably have a summer type of round, but it's not definitive at this time because they have not published information related to that. But if they do this year what they did last year, there would maybe be a summer round. But if we wanted to have this project consider this round and see the project potentially close in 2026 and maybe get started before the end of the calendar year, it would need to be considered in this round. Otherwise, we would be looking at the next round and a 2027 start.
I know we also don't have a meeting the first week of March. Let me talk to my colleagues, Councilor Toomey, Councilor Mitra, whichever one of you wants to weigh in first, and you're both welcome to weigh in, of course. It's what's your pleasure on either taking a vote tonight or not? I can give you my suggestion if you want to hear it first or last, but I'm curious on what your thoughts are as well.
Mr. Chair, I think I would like to hear what your thoughts are regarding this.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts are as follows. I don't think there's time. I think there needs to be, let me start this way. I think there needs to be tighter controls in place. And I think the law department, Mr. Dunn, can guide us in that direction because obviously the work in progress, things are better, as was said by Mr. Dunn, than they are the projects that don't have any sort of oversight. However, it's not perfect, and it's not maybe close to perfect. But I don't think we can get there in a couple weeks. It's going to need some work. I'm encouraged that there's communication between at least one particular union, the Carpenters Union, and the McKinney Group. That doesn't mean all the problems and issues are resolved, but at least there's a willingness to talk. I think by the time we get it back on the council, we don't meet the week after next. Somebody could hold it next week. Not saying they will, they could. Now we're into the second week of March, and we're already getting close to the time in which further financing issues for them will be in jeopardy until later in the summer. If we want this to go forward, I think, my own personal opinion is, if we want this to go forward with the understanding that we're going to work hard to get better controls in place moving forward, then I don't see any reason why we delay this. If we don't want it to go forward, or if we want to try to get better controls in place before we move forward on it, then obviously it can be delayed, but that wouldn't be my preference.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly I think that between now and the next meeting, we could certainly get a greater indication of where we are in the process of working on greater controls and communication. And at that point in time, with the final vote, that information would be available and could be dealt with at that time. If
So
it's
would you
not
be
enough
suggesting a
conflicts.
chairman's order and a vote tonight?
Pardon me?
Would you be suggesting a chairman's order for additional information
Yes.
and a vote tonight?
Yes.
I'm fine with that.
Mr. Chair,
I want to hear from, yep, Council Mitra.
Mr. Chair, I agree with what you said. I think we have talked quite a bit tonight. We have heard our residents. They came up with many issues. We talked to Menkiti Group. I'm very happy that they came here to represent. I understand that Mr. Bo Menkiti, because he's traveled abroad, he couldn't be here. He did send us a letter explaining his position, but it was nice of President Keeney to be here, John to be here, and represent you. I was really hoping that you do come, because these are the issues. If you hadn't come and addressed, then I would probably have a very difficult time to think about this project to Menkiti. However, we have heard a lot. We have seen that we have issues still to settle. We have given many advice and suggestions to Mr. Dunn. I also talked to Ms. Skinny about how we want to work friendly way and how we want to see that the ethical standard be of paramount importance. And no matter what project we do, we want to maintain that RDO that we have written, and that should be complied, and everyone working with the contractors and subcontractors should be following that. And there should be some kind of, now in the next time when we meet after Mr. Dunn and maybe a Menkiti Group or Ms. Keeney, President Keeney talks together and kind of think it over that what we have talked today, and just come back to us and explain that how this has impacted our conversation before we give the vote.
Okay, I agree with that. So my chairman's order, subject to my colleagues giving me further insight into how they would like it worded, but at first stab at it would be for the law department to give us guidance on what further measures could be taken to strengthen enforcement of the responsible development ordinance. And I'd like to have that for our next council meeting, if possible.
Through the chair, if you could just repeat the last half of that there, request law department to provide guidance on additional, did you say measures of enforcement?
Enforcement measures that can be, and I'll go a little further with that, that can be implemented immediately regarding the responsible development ordinance.
Got it, thank you.
My colleagues satisfied with that, or do you want to edit it in any way?
That sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then thank you. And then clerk, can we take a vote on moving this forward?
Through the chair, just I want to make sure I understood you properly. Would you like to take a vote on the chairman's order, or would you like to take a vote on the item itself?
So my understanding is we don't have to take a vote on the chairman's order. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. But
That is correct. I just want,
yeah, so we just take a vote then on the agenda item itself.
okay. Item 4A, which would be recommend approval. Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
Counselor Mitra?
Yes.
And Chairperson Counselor Bergman?
Yes.
Okay, that would be recommend approval 3-0 on a roll call.
Are you taking a roll call, Claire? I missed what you said.
Through the chair, I did just take the roll call.
Okay, that's what I thought. Is there any other agenda items left?
Through the chair, that is there is one additional item. It's 5A, transmitting informational communication relative to the semi-annual tax increment financing and tax increment exemption report for the period ending June 30th, 2025.
If there's no objection from either of my colleagues, it's 8:30. We've been at it for a while. I don't see any urgency in this item. Why don't we hold this till our next meeting, which I don't think will be as long as this meeting was. Either of my colleagues have any objection to that?
No?
No.
The motion would be to hold.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
Counselor Mitra?
Yes.
And Chairperson Counselor Bergman.
Yes. And if there's nothing left on the agenda, the motion then would be to conclude the meeting. Or
Counselor-
adjourn.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
Counselor Mitra?
Yes.
And Chairperson Counselor Bergman.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Claire, thank you for clerking, and thank my colleagues, and thank the public for their patience. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.